Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1516 of the War News stream. And tonight, it seems like things are popping off all over the Middle East and in Europe as well. We have seen today that the U.S. Navy just hours ago fired on and seized an Iranian ship near the Hormuz Strait in a very big move, and now Iran's vowing retaliation. We're also seeing that an explosion erupted at an Iranian shipbuilding facility right off their coast, and also there are reports of heavy fighter jet activity over the entirety of the Middle East, and it seems like things are on the verge of happening in big league. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments after we were able to see that significant tensions were rising inside the area of the Strait of Hormuz earlier this morning. Just hours ago, the USS Spruance of the United States Navy has fired upon and seized a Iranian tanker that was attempting to violate and run the blockade by the United States of America near to the entrance of the Gulf of Oman. The elements of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit were the ones to board the vessel and bring it under the possession and custody of the United States of America, meaning that this is the first direct armed action between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran since the ceasefire technically went into effect nearly 2 weeks ago. The Islamic Republic of Iran immediately returned fire, launching several one-way FPV drones, allegedly at the USS Spruance and other vessels within the area, which we believed were shot down, as we haven't been able to hear any distress signals or distress calls being given by U.S. merchant ships within the area. This is showing that, at least at the moment right now, direct kinetic conflict has already returned, and the Islamic Republic of Iran has now vowed that they will be avenging the vessel that was stricken by the United States and also seized and brought under the custody of the United States by the Marines. Additionally, we've also seen that the Strait of Hormuz is still completely closed once again today, and we also assume that statements by the President of the United States earlier this morning that another round of talks were going to be conducted inside of Islamabad and Pakistan will most likely not not be happening at this point, because the Iranians have stated that it's not happening, and due to the fact that everybody shot each other today, it's probably also not going to be happening for that reason as well. We have also seen that in very recent moments, there does appear to be a increasing spike in oil prices, and while oil prices have dropped to below $90 a barrel, they're about to be rapidly raising back up to $90 a barrel, and most likely heading beyond, as the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz does appear that it'll be going on for some time. Some U.S. officials have finally started to demand that the United States just militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz and break the blockade, and the President of the United States is once again threatening to blow up every single power plant and bridge inside the Islamic Republic of Iran if the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. We have also heard that out of the Islamic Republic of Iran's northern coast along the Caspian Sea, a significant shipbuilders was hit and caught on fire today due to some sort of an unknown explosion. We don't know who caused it and what exactly hit the place, but something certainly did hit it and caused a decent amount of damage. Additionally, heavy Air Force activity has been reported by the Israeli Air Force in the southern and northern areas of Syria, and we've also additionally heard that the Gerald R. Ford has returned to combat duties within the Middle East and is currently on station within the northern Red Sea. The Yemeni Houthis have once again threatened that if armed conflict resumes between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran, they will be shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb, the significant strait through the southern Red Sea that allows for passage in and out of the Suez Canal. Further than that, we've also seen major U.S. airlifts being conducted as well inside the Balkans, and we've also heard within the Russian Federation some significant developments as well, as Zelensky has stated that the Russians shut down the internet inside of their country to try and avoid larger riots. We've also heard that Putin's motorcade was skirting around Moscow at about 120 miles an hour today and was caught on film literally burning rubber. It seems that there is something going on, at least in the Russian government at this moment, and some meetings were held in between some top government officials, mostly the reason for the absolute bullying around the city, but we do not know exactly what they talked about and what the plans are from the Russians yet after these meetings that were held today within the inner circles of the Russian government. Nevertheless, while that was going on, major Ukrainian drone attacks were ongoing throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation, and have once again hit the port of Tuapse, and fires have continued in the area of Sevastopol. Additional reports have also emerged suggesting that drone attacks are currently going on in the larger area of the Krasnodar Oblast at this very moment. We have also seen, in other news, some significant developments out of North Korea, as it appears that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is launching Hwasong-11D cluster munition missiles in test firings in the Sea of Japan at this moment. But with all that in mind, y'all can tell, I'm sure, that tonight is a massive night of news, and we have a significant amount of news to cover, of course starting with our largest stories first, but in moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. We also have an incredible fundraiser for none other than the Amazing Wounded Warriors Project, which helps out wounded U.S. veterans in being able to recover and be rehabilitated from their injuries where they gave their all for this country. I hope that we see that this fundraiser is able to reach that $2,500 goal, because the Lee Spring Army has never missed a fundraising goal in the entirety of its history. But while we allow the Lee Spring Army to win its own victory against the fundraiser, we are going to be making sure to cover the significant developments in news that have happened over the course of this day, starting with our largest stories, and then moving our way, of course, into the smaller ones throughout the night. Moving us on, first and foremost, into the largest stories of the day, we are going to be returning back to the Strait of Hormuz. If there is such a thing as a singular, tiny geographical area that has been covered on the news in the longest sequential period of time on this channel's history, it is this one little strip of water. This thing has been covered every single day now since the war began between the United States and Iran, and it does appear that we'll be talking about that quite heavily today, and it is absolutely major to developments that have transpired. Earlier this morning, reports had come out from the United States of America that there were going to be further talks, as we were able to hear this from the President of the United States. Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday at the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. Many of them were aimed at a French ship and a freighter from the United Kingdom. That wasn't nice, was it? My representatives are going to Islamabad, Pakistan. They will be there tomorrow evening for negotiations. Iran recently announced that they were blocking the strait, which is strange because our blockade has already closed it. They're helping us without knowing, and they are the ones that lose with the closed passage. $500 million a day. the United States loses nothing. In fact, many ships are headed right now to the U.S., Texas, Louisiana, and Alaska to load up compliments of the IRGC, always wanting to be the tough guy. We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal. I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. They'll come down fast. They'll come down easy. And if they don't take the deal, it will be my honor to do what has to be done, which should have been done to Iran by other presidents for the last 47 years. It's time for the Iran killing machine to end. After this statement was made by the President of the United States, we also were able to hear an additional statement by the President of the United States, once again reiterating that there would be damage or strikes to power plants and also bridges throughout the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But before we continue on with our current daily news coverage, we actually have breaking news that is emerging at this moment. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so right now, we're going to jump out of the Middle East for just a second. Something massive is happening right now inside of Russia. It looks like Ukraine has launched it could be one of the biggest strikes I've seen in a minute. It looks like Tuapse is currently like a volcano right now. Ukraine has struck the oil farm, or the oil depot there in Tuapse. And it is a massive, I mean, look at that. I mean, that is crazy. The whole thing is up in blazes. So apparently this just happened. It just took place like 15, 20 minutes ago, and it's still an ongoing situation. So right now, Russia's having a bit of a problem, as you can see here in Tuapse.
It certainly does appear that the damage at Tuapse, as this is now our damage assessment for the attacks that we already documented just a little while ago, and we were going to get in the news tonight. It does appear that we're finally getting the damage assessments out from those attacks, and it appears that the entirety of the fuel silos or fuel depot at Tuapse has been caught on fire by a multitude of drone explosions within the area of the oil farms and the oil tanks. To quickly bring y'all to this and show y'all the scope and scale of the damage that we're witnessing right there, this is the broader area from all the way to the coast and about a mile and a half into the city that we're watching burning right now on film. It's this entire strip. And to give you all an actual measurement of this right here, it measures probably about a mile long in the amount of fire, flames, and smoke that is belching right now from central Tuapse, showing us that the Ukrainian armed forces have most likely completely destroyed and knocked out this port as an oil loading facility due to the severity and damage of the attack, which has just been conducted right now on the port of Tuapse, a major strategic success for the armed forces of Ukraine in their attempt to economically drive the Russian Federation to its knees and end the war through an economic defeat inside the Russian Federation. But moving us on out of that breaking news, a huge shout out to Enforcer Matt for getting us that damage assessment here live on air on the attacks that were ongoing before we went on air just about 30 minutes ago. And moving us on out of that breaking news and back into our usual breaking news inside the Strait of Hormuz, we also were able to hear that according to the United States of America, or at least the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Navy has deployed autonomous underwater drones to the Strait of Hormuz to clear sea mines placed by Iran, aiming to reopen the critical shipping lane. Currently, we do not know how these would have been deployed, as we generally understand that the littoral combat ships that would deploy these autonomous minesweeping drones would have to be somewhere relatively close to the Strait of Hormuz and the alleged minefield to be able to begin demining operations. Right now, we do not know of any littoral combat ships, or really the location of any U.S. warships specifically within the area, to be able to verify that they are somewhere within the strait, not being fired upon, and are attempting to clear out the minefield. This might be a bit of a preemptive or possibly even a premature report, as we do not believe that the conditions are safe enough at this moment for U.S. warships to be able to go into the Strait of Hormuz and begin demining operations, while also ensuring that they're able to retain and keep the autonomous drones that these littoral combat ships are able to deploy to be able to try and clear out these minefields. So we'll wait and see if we get any further corroboration of that story. It appears that at the moment right now, those are the statements and alleged claims by the Wall Street Journal, but we'll be looking out to see if we can get any further proof that that is ongoing at this moment right now. Here on the channel, folks, we're generally assuming that the United States will have to conduct some form of an air campaign or an air ground strike campaign against Iranian coastal defense forces near to the area of the Hormuz and also further inland to be able to try and knock out most of the anti-ship weaponry that the Iranians could use against the U.S. Navy's assets that would start the demining operations. Once most of those forces have been knocked out, or there's been at least a significant degradation in their abilities, we would most likely then see the littoral combat ships move much closer to the alleged minefield and begin the demining operations at that point. That's why we're saying right now this report may be a little bit premature, and we'll be waiting to see if we can get any further analysis or corroboration to be able to show that that claim is accurate. Additionally, we've also heard that in the midst of the day, it appears that some people within the United States of America are now stating that the United States must take control of the Strait of Hormuz militarily, and must militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz because all of the attempted negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran have not been that successful. According to a U.S. Senator, Lindsey Graham, he stated the following: "The brilliant blockade is crushing the Iranian economy. The IRGC attack of international shipping is a sign of desperation. Mr. President, take control of the Strait of Hormuz and keep the blockade in place. Then you will truly have all the cards." Does he listen to this show or something?
Maybe. There's no telling these days.
Because, I mean, that's literally what I've been saying. But anyways, as to enrichment, if you thought it would be a bad idea to recognize that Al-Qaeda had the right to enrich even with a moratorium, you'd be right. The Iranian regime and Al-Qaeda are no different. They have the same goals. This terrorist regime with American blood on its hands, and a lot of Iranian civilians' blood on its hands for that matter, has no right to enrich, period. They cheat and lie. No JCPOA-like deal on the president's watch. So currently it does appear that the statements by the one U.S. senator is starting to suggest that the United States should militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is what we've largely been claiming here on this channel for some time, as we foresee that as the only successful chance that the United States may have to be able to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, as we really cannot rely or count on the Iranians to open it on their own volition, as they have shown time and time again in the multiple attempts that we've given for them to reopen the strait, that they have no intention or wish to reopen the Strait of Hormuz at any point within the indefinite future, meaning that if we need it open right now, we would have to remove their ability to keep it closed, meaning we'd have to bomb them out and forcibly reopen it. We've also additionally been able to hear that a statement by the president was issued just several hours ago, which leads us into the major story of this day. And this is the story that has largely captivated our headline, most likely is captivating a lot of y'all right now, and so make sure to call your family around to the screen or tell them to pop on YouTube themselves and pull up the stream, as we have significant news that has come out at this moment right now about the major developments that have happened inside of the area around the Strait of Hormuz today. Before we move on into that, though, I do have to say that we have a significant poll that has been put out on some statements, or more so threats, that the U.S. president has issued to the Islamic Republic of Iran today over if they don't open the Strait of Hormuz, then A, B, C, and D will start to happen to them, which is the bombing of bridges and power plants. And a lot of people have been asked at this moment right now whether or not they support this sort of inaction if Iran does not reach a peace deal. And currently, a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so today we've seen a return to form. We're seeing these wild, pretty extreme threats coming out of the United States toward Iran, and before we did not see the U.S. carry out these threats of hitting bridges and power plants. It was largely just an empty threat last time, but now they're returning right back to it, and even worse than that, they're saying that they'll blow up the entire country of Iran if they don't come to a peace deal. So, I mean, already we're seeing some pretty crazy threats coming out. So, what are your thoughts? Do you support it or are you against it? 43% said, I support that because it is necessary, it is war, while 34% said I oppose it, it's not appropriate, and 16% said it really depends on Iran's next move. And this one's a bit tricky. We've gone over this debate many times over. We went over this the last time they made these threats, and I was actually against it for the most part, because we have to remember that the power plants and even the bridges, those are dual use targets, meaning it's going to affect civilians and possibly the military as well. But the U.S. is saying they're going to hit all bridges and all power plants. That's going to be a hard bill to prove that every single one of those power plants and bridges is being used for the military. That's a hard proof, or a burden of proof to meet. So, you know, it's a very wide-ranging threat. Me personally, I would say I'm kind of on the fence about it, because I get the fact it's a war. We have to do certain things. If it's able to be proven that these bridges and power plants are being used for military, then I would say it's fair game, it's war. But they got to be able to prove that, though. They can't just go in there and take out everything and then say, oh, you know, we just did it because we wanted to. It's like, well, we have to adhere to the rules of war. We're not barbarians. We don't ever want to become barbarians. So I'm kind of in between. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would actually have to say that I'm generally with the 34%. I oppose the idea. It's not appropriate, nor does it achieve our aims with the Strait of Hormuz. I have to ask everyone here, beyond us being tired of the Iranians and wanting to deal with them, how does blowing up their power plants and bridges stop the Iranian blockade in the Hormuz? I'm more so of a person who believes in removing a lot of the frills and conducting necessary actions and necessary actions alone. I'm not really one for blowing up power plants and bridges because I just don't see how that's necessary to achieving our aims of removing the blockade on the Hormuz and reopening international shipping. A power plant keeping a light bulb on in Isfahan has nothing to do with that blockade. Neither do the bridges, unless if a military unit is about to pass over the bridge, is passing over the bridge, or appears to be continuously using the bridge, meaning that most bridges inside the Islamic Republic of Iran really couldn't be justified as wartime or military targets until we actually see an Iranian military unit driving down that highway towards that bridge or actively crossing over that bridge at that very moment in time when we hit it and destroy it. So I would generally have to say, I don't really see the justification or really the reasoning behind hitting their power plants and also their generally their critical infrastructure like bridges. And here's another question that we have to have, folks. If the United States of America, because we always have to remember here, folks, that we're trying to fight a propaganda initiative inside of Iran to win over the hearts and minds of the Iranian citizenry, how in the world can the United States claim, oh, lo, we are the beholders of the and liberators of the Iranian people. We are here to save them from this oppressive regime, which has forced them to suffer so heavily and has continued to degrade their quality of life, their economic standing, and has also brutally massacred their civilians in the thousands to repress them. And then while we're saying that, we're bombing out the bridges that those people are going to be using every day to get to work, to conduct their business, and the power plants which provide the power to their businesses and their enterprises for them to be able to even have a middling chance economically to get by each day and to pay their bills. It's very hard to try and sell that sort of a picture to an Iranian populace that we are their liberators and their saviors from a repressive regime when we're the ones who are actually actively worsening their quality of life on the day-to-day. And even still, we're not doing anything to improve our strategic lot in the situation either, meaning that this ends up being a lose-lose. And also, another thing that I have to say, another point, is that we're going to be wasting a significant amount of ordnance that we could be using to better effect elsewhere to be able to try and hit power plants and bridges that at least at the moment that they're going to be hit, if we're going for a totality approach where all power plants and all bridges must be destroyed, we're not really getting a lot of an return on an investment there, at least as far as the ordnance we're dropping and the damage that's going to be inflicting in any meaningful way for our interests. Those bombs would be a lot better used being dropped on the Iranian forces that are trying to blockade the Hormuz right now, and the ones further inland who are also supporting that blockade as well. I feel like that would be a far more effective use of this ordnance that would also be able to ensure that we do not lose the propaganda battle inside of Iran with the Iranian people, and that we see that we don't turn even more of them away from the United States and towards supporting the regime. And not only that starts to directly deal with our very main and primary issue right now, in that the Strait of Hormuz is closed and we want to reopen it. So reopening means that if a door in front of you is locked, instead of going and punching out your neighbor's window with your bare fists, maybe it's better to get a battering ram and knock down the door that you have a problem with that's locked. I feel like that would be our best approach. But moving us on out of that, we've also seen other developments over the course of the day inside the Strait of Hormuz, and these are the ones, suffice to say, that are the most title-catching for the day. And this is getting us on into the major situation that has happened that has guaranteed that war will return to the region. A statement by the President of the United States was issued several hours ago, and this was the statement. And we will show you all the footage that we have afterwards and explain the situation as we have seen it in video and picture evidence after we go over the statement. Today, an Iranian-flagged cargo ship named Tuska, nearly 900 feet long and weighing almost as much as an aircraft carrier, tried to get past our naval blockade, and it didn't go well for them. The U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer, the USS Spruance, intercepted the Tuska in the Gulf of Oman and gave them fair warning to stop. The Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy ship stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the machinery spaces or the engine room. Right now, the U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel, and the Tuska is under U.S. Treasury sanctions because of their prior history of illegal activity. We have full custody of the ship and are seeing what's on board. President of the United States. A statement then also came out by the U.S. Navy and was also followed by footage as well, showing the United States intercepting the motor vessel Tuska and also stating that since the blockade's commencement, U.S. forces have directed 25 commercial vessels to turn around and or return to an Iranian port. Here is the footage, and then I'll explain in further detail the situation as it transpired. We can see here the footage from the bridge, or more so the outer deck of the bridge on the USS Spruance as they follow the USS Tuska. At this point, At this point in the video, we believe that they had been following the Tuska for a couple of hours at this point, at least 2 to 3 hours, as we know that the chase, or if we want to call it that, lasted for about an entirety of 6.5 to 7 hours before the USS Spruance fired onto the vessel.
Motor Vessel Tuska, vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room. We're prepared to subject you to disabling fire.
So they apparently gave them a warning that they were going to hit the engine room before they struck it. That's actually a pretty big courtesy, actually. They didn't have to do that.
Yeah, actually, they gave them a significant amount of warnings. This pursuit went on for about 6 to 7 hours today, and from what we understand, the USS Spruance broadcast to the captain of that ship multiple times that they were demanding that the ship stop. It was breaking an active blockade, and then once it started to get towards the end of the pursuit, they started to directly warn, like you were hearing in the video right there, that they would fire up onto the engine room and the machinery spaces and render the vessel inoperable and board the ship if they did not stop and turn around. And apparently, from what we understand, the MV Tuska refused to turn around all the way up until the U.S. Navy had to take forceful action, firing the 5-inch main gun on board the Spruance into the machinery spaces, knocking the vessel out, and then boarding it with elements of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit that were sent to capture and control the vessel. We can now hear them using the foghorn. And now you see the 5-inch gun firing into the engine room. We also have additional footage of this action from another angle, which we can show y'all about right here. So let me quickly go and try and... Actually, it appears that it's a similar angle. But let me go and get y'all U.S. Central Command's exact statements, since we have the transcript right here, of their disabling of the motor vessel Tuska. U.S. forces disable a vessel attempting to enter Iranian port, violating the blockade. This statement came out from CENTCOM Command's headquarters in Tampa, Florida. U.S. forces operating in the Arabian Sea enforced naval blockade measures against an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel attempting to sail toward an Iranian port on the 19th of April. The guided missile destroyer USS Spruance intercepted MV Tuska as it transited the North Arabian Sea at 17 knots en route to Bandar Abbas, Iran. American forces issued multiple warnings and informed the Iranian-flagged vessel it was in violation of the United States blockade. After Tuska's crew failed to comply with repeated warnings over a 6-hour period, Spruance directed the vessel to evacuate its engine room. Spruance disabled Tuska's propulsion by firing several rounds from the destroyer's 5-inch Mark 45 gun, the main gun at the bow of the ship, into Tuska's engine room. United States Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit later boarded the non-compliant vessel, which has remained in U.S. custody. American forces acted in deliberate, professional, and proportional manner to ensure compliance. Since the blockade's commencement, the U.S. forces have directed 25 commercial vessels to turn around or return to an Iranian port. We also were able to hear that the Iranians were soon to respond after this incident occurred. And after we've been able to get it through all of these details, I do have to tell y'all that if you have any questionability about whether or not the United States used appropriate force or used an abundance of force, the United States used only the necessary amount of force in this engagement. The motor vessel Tuska violated the blockade at the blockade line at the entrance of the Gulf of Oman, and once it violated that blockade line, the USS Spruance was sent out to hunt down the vessel and order it to turn around and leave the blockade area. It spent 6 hours warning the vessel that it needed to turn around. It was in violation of the United States blockade, and if it did not turn around, lethal force, such as the 5-inch gun, would be used to disable the vessel, and then it would be boarded and seized by the United States of America. At that point, the Iranian motor vessel had two options. One, it could turn around, and the United States would not board the vessel, but the vessel also, in turn, would not be fired upon, or the Iranians could try and continue to break the blockade and be fired upon to disable the vessel and then be boarded by elements of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. The motor vessel Tuska decided the latter and decided instead to try and break the blockade for an entirety of 6 hours and then eventually be stopped by the firepower of the United States Navy. It was a fairly professional encounter, one that was an armed confrontation and an armed attack on an Iranian-flagged vessel, but nevertheless, only the appropriate force was used when it was necessary at the point it became clear that they were not going to stop.
Also, by the way, just for historical reference, when's the last time the U.S. Navy actually fired on a vessel like this? Because I don't think this has happened recently, any time of recent history. So, when's the last time that you can recall something like this happening? Like, for example, using a 5-inch gun or any type of weapon to fire on another ship like that?
Jeez, man, I actually wouldn't know. I
It's
mean, I
Vietnam.
uh, it might have been Korea. Let me pull it up. Last time U.S. ship fired. Let's see.
Because it
Name.
certainly seems rare to me. I mean, I haven't seen this happen in ages. I've heard about this in history, but I haven't heard this in like recent times at all.
Let's see. So it appears that the last time a ship used its main gun in combat actions was in, from what I could find really quickly, 1991 during the Gulf War with the USS Wisconsin and Missouri firing their 16-inch main guns at Iraqi ground forces in Kuwait in support of U.S. forces that were fighting the Gulf War in 1991. So it looks to have been the year of 1991, the last time that a main
Damn.
gun had been used against any target for that matter. But as far as a vessel, I wouldn't even be able to tell you.
So at least 30 years ago, at least, and
Almost
that's
40.
possibly, yeah, that's a long time ago. This has happened, so that's quite interesting. This is one of the first times in many decades this has actually happened. So quite remarkable. Also, by the way, we have like 4K footage of it this time being released straight from CENTCOM, which is interesting to see that. Like we're literally getting to watch it just a couple of hours after it happened, which we were definitely not able to do way back in 1990. That was not a thing. So very interesting, a big change.
Also, I saw someone say, well, that's more artillery. And you're right, David Boy. But, I mean, in defense of the statement, a 5-inch gun is artillery as well. I mean, a 5-inch gun is a 127 millimeter main gun, if I'm not mistaken. And that's fairly close to being on caliber with an M777 on the mainland being used by the U.S. Army. So, if you wanted to, you could kind of call a 5-inch gun artillery as well, because it is certainly a large caliber if we compare it to any sort of a land force counterpart that would be in the artillery. But moving us on out of that, it's now time for us folks to get on and into the aftermath that we were able to hear of. Apparently, according at least to the Iranian claims, the Iranians claimed that some American military ships were targeted near to the Strait of Hormuz, and this was the statement that they put out today. The self-proclaimed greatest military force in the world became the leader of pirates. When American terrorist military forces attacked an Iranian container ship named Tosca, which was traveling from China to Iran in the Gulf of Oman a few hours ago. After the Americans attacked this ship, Iranian forces also attacked some military ships with drones. They didn't really elaborate on whether that worked or not, and I think it didn't work,
Yeah, also, by the way, I mean, look at the way the Iranians worded that. They said, also, by the way, after the Iranians kind of smacked our ass around a little bit, we also attacked some American ships too. It's like, what, do you mind naming what ships you attacked? Like, what do you mean just you attacked some ships? It's like, what does that mean?
Man, they said they blew up the motor vessel Tuska at this exact place at this exact time with this many rounds, and then in response, our great mighty response, some weapons were used against some ships somewhere somehow. Like it's like, I mean, could you get any less descriptive? Like,
Yeah, I would say so. Also, by the way, it is interesting that the Iranian media is claiming that the ship traveled from China to Iran. So, if you believe that claim, the Marines are currently on board that vessel. From the report, the 31st Marine MEU is currently on board that vessel, and they have it in U.S. custody. So, the U.S. president suggested in his Truth Social post that they're going to be looking through the ship and examining it and seeing what's on board the ship, which I'm not sure what they're going to find there, but I'm sure we'll hear about that probably either late tonight or maybe tomorrow morning, possibly, about what's on the ship. But that will be interesting. If you believe the Iranians, it came from China. So that'll be fascinating.
that will be pretty fascinating. Also, by the way, to give you all a little bit of extra information here as to what went down with the whole firing upon the Tuska, this is actually the exact variant of gun. This is the Mark 45 Mod 4 gun that was on board the USS Spruance that was used to fire at the Tuska. And these things actually do pack a little bit of a punch. One thing that's interesting, though, and a lot of people always look at these guns, and one of the first things that most people say is, wow, that's absolutely nothing compared to a battleship like the Missouri or the New Jersey with a 16-inch gun. And that's true, but most times in the modern day, these sorts of guns, like this Mark 45 here, are actually used as anti-air flak cannons. Most of the rounds are actually proximity fused rounds that are able to be used in air defense. So if there's an incoming missile, this thing is able to start lobbing shots out due to the firing computer and the radars on board out about 12 miles or so, if I'm not mistaken, and the rounds are able to explode in air near to the incoming missile or the incoming threat, which provides the medium-range air defense for the vessel. Most modern destroyers like these are guided missile destroyers. They're mostly built as air defense ships. They're not really built to be able to brawl it out with other enemy ships because it's the missile age. Most every threat they're going to be dealing with is going to be air-based. It's either going to be a flying anti-ship missile or a flying enemy aircraft. So they have long-range air defense, which is their SM-3s and their SM-2s. They have their medium-range air defense, which is this Mark 45 here, and then they have their short-range air defense, which is the CWIS, or the close-in weapon system on board, which is the very last line of defense if a weapon has come incredibly close to the vessel. But that generally is the breakdown of the kind of weapon that was used. But we understand that for one of the few times ever, this ship might have actually used its high explosive rounds for the Mark 45, which are kept in very limited supply on board the ship because it's generally understood in the modern day that the chances of this vessel having to fire upon another enemy ship is incredibly low, so we generally understand that on most U.S. Navy vessels, the stores of high explosive shells compared to most other types is usually somewhat low. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking at this moment about what's going to be happening now that the United States has fired upon the Iranian vessel Tuska and has also boarded and seized the ship today. And Matthew, what are people currently thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so what's going to happen here? Because right now, the Iranians, of course, they are livid as hell because now one of their ships has been seized by the U.S. Marines and the U.S. Navy, and they are angry as hell. They're vowing they're going to get revenge on the United States. They're going to do blah, 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 but we'll have to see what exactly they're going to do because right now it's all a bunch of language and we're not seeing any real action. But now that we've seen just hours ago, like we've seen in all those footage that is, we're seeing that the Iranian cargo ship tried to run the blockade, but didn't go so well, and they took direct hits straight to the engine room from one of our U.S. Vessels. So what are your thoughts? What will happen next? 46% said Iran will likely attack the U.S. Navy next. That'll be the next step. While 37% said the U.S. will shock and awe Iran with a preemptive attack. And only 7% said that Iran will engage in peace talks. So if you believe the claim coming out of the United States today, allegedly, the Iranians have agreed to meet in Islamabad, Pakistan for a second round of peace talks. But the Iranians are saying that's not true, and now the U.S. just seized one of their ships, and I have a feeling that they're livid, and they're probably not going to be showing up whatsoever. So I would say at this point, I'm waiting for the preemptive U.S. attack on Iran. I think they might try to shock and awe the reopening of this war, and I'm with the 37%. I think that might be the case. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have a feeling that we're probably going to watch this ceasefire collapse within the next 2 days, most likely, because the fact that the United States fired on an Iranian flagship today technically breaks the ceasefire in a sense. And also the fact that the Iranians, according to their own words, fired back at our ships technically means that they also broke the ceasefire as well. And I know a lot of people are about to say, well, we didn't break the ceasefire because it was breaking our blockade. But if you fire upon anything in the midst of a ceasefire, when it was supposed to be a total ceasefire in all instances for everything, and you fire on a ship that is Iranian flagged, and the one that did that is an American flagged vessel, that is generally called breaking the ceasefire regardless. And the fact that the Iranians fired back also broke the ceasefire on their end as well. So at this point, the ceasefire has collapsed technically, and the shooting war has started once more. It's just that we don't know if the Iranian ground batteries that will operate the TELs and all the other Iranian ground forces are going to start opening fire on everyone throughout the region here really soon. We just don't know that yet, but we do know that the shooting war is basically back on at this point. The ceasefire has ended just a few hours ago today. So, there you have it, folks. I think that's largely what we can get out of this. Now, we got to get y'all on into the statements from the Iranians, because I've covered all the U.S. developments today and the U.S. statements and whatnot, but I have to get y'all to the Iranian statements that came out of Tehran and also more so focalized around the Hormuz. Moving us on into the Hormuz statements by the Iranians did vow after the motor vessel Tuska was hit today that they were going to be responding. The spokesperson of the central headquarters of the Hasrat Khatam al-Anbiya, what a name, stated the aggressive America violated the ceasefire and committed maritime piracy by firing at one of Iran's commercial ships in the waters of the Sea of Oman and disabling its navigation systems by deploying a number of its terrorist marines.
Terrorist marines?
Man,
that's a new one.
Man, I like according. I think the story that the Marines got is that I think the story that the Iranians got is that the U.S. commanders told the Marines that there was some like mango flavored Jewel pods and a couple of red Crayolas on board that ship, and they went ham. I guess I don't know. But on the deck of the mentioned vessel, thereby assaulting it. You know, I've never heard, folks, of the phrase terrorist Marines. I've never heard that one. That one's news to me. We warn that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will soon respond to and retaliate against this maritime robbery and armed act by the U.S. military. Oh boy. Yeah, what a statement. We also were able to hear once again that they were vowing to respond, and that they stated, according to their military spokesperson, that Iran will respond to and retaliate against let me pause it. Against this armed piracy by the US Army. The Army wasn't even there. Like, now they're picking on the Army. Oh my God, I gotta tell y'all, folks. The Iranians are angry. They don't know who they're angry at. So now they've named off the terrorist Marines, the pirate Navy, and now apparently the Army are pirates. I never heard of anyone in the U.S. Army being pirates. Like, I've heard of them being raiders, but I've never heard of them being pirates.
His name is Donald Blackbeard. It's like, come on now. It's like, please give me a break. It's like, who's the pirate? It's like, okay, if we're gonna play this game and the U.S. is pirates all of a sudden for simply enforcing a naval blockade, and that's considered piracy now, then I mean, what are we gonna call the Iranians? Like professional trolls or tolls? It's like, and they're literally trolling the Strait of Hormuz right now, and they're demanding payment like a troll through the Larak and Kashim Islands. So I mean, what do they call themselves?
I don't even know, man. It's like that's kind of rich for them to say the U.S. Or pirates by conducting a blockade. It's like, haven't they blown up multiple innocent ships from every country in the world at this point in the Persian Gulf and the Hormuz over like the past month and a half? And that doesn't qualify them as pirates? It's like, what type of clown world are they living in? You know what, folks? The reason why they're not pirates is because they actually are the Ringling Brothers Circus. And so they're not just the clown, they're the entire clown show. So that's really why they don't fall under the same category, because they're just going around with a big red nose, honking it every once in a while. And that's about what the Iranian armed forces are in reality. But anyways, moving us on from that, we also were able to hear that they put out their final statement today that Tehran will never concede control of the Strait of Hormuz, according to a senior Iranian politician who spoke to the BBC Channel 1. So, yeah, it appears, everyone, we did get the idea. We already knew that. They're never going to give up control of the Strait of Hormuz. So, we're back to square one of getting it open. Now, moving us on up into Tehran, we have to get the major statements that came out of here as well, because they're complementary to the statements that came out about the Hormuz today and everything going on down there. Early in the morning, Iran rejected taking part in a second round of negotiations with the United States, already showing that while the U.S. government had stated that they were going to be talking with the Iranians in Islamabad, the Iranians had already made it clear they were not going to be talking to the United States in Islamabad. We then were able to hear that the Iranians have stated that they are ready and monitoring U.S. redeployments that are for either psychological pressure in the negotiation, or for a surprise and rapid military attack. And they warned that if attacked, they will retarget Aramco, Yanbu, and Fujairah. So apparently the Iranians are taking a playbook out of the president's, and they're just threatening to hit all civilian critical infrastructure they can handle with the amount of firepower that they have, instead of directly fighting the United States and trying to at least stave off the inevitable. So it looks like they're threatening to strike Aramco in Saudi Arabia, Yanbu, which, Matthew, where is Yanbu at again? I'm trying to remember that. Isn't that in Bahrain or Qatar?
Let's see here. And that's an oil refinery, I'm assuming, by the way.
I believe it's a company or a refinery, if I'm not mistaken.
So apparently that's Saudi Aramco. That's part of it right there. It looks like it's on the coast of Saudi Arabia. Let me double check this. Yeah, that's actually on the Red Sea side, actually. So it's apparently as part of Saudi Aramco.
Oh, here it is right here. Okay, so now we know that. Oh, they're talking about this. The oil loading port right here that the pipeline terminates at. Okay, now we know, everyone. And then they said that they would attack Fujairah, which Fujairah is the major civil port within the United Arab Emirates, which you can see right here. This is Fujairah port. So, from what we understand, the Iranians are threatening to target critical and civilian infrastructure, not of America's, but of our aligned nations inside the Middle East. So, apparently the Iranians are threatening that, at least in the moment, which is, once again, a war crime. We also were able to hear that Iran is now believing that attacks on their country by the United States are probably highly likely and might happen before the ceasefire ends. I think we're all going to get an understanding this is definitely going to be happening before the ceasefire ends. And we also were able to hear that apparently the Iranians then came out, according to the IRANIAN, claiming that the second round of talks in Islamabad are inaccurate, and they will not be conducting any second round of talks in Islamabad, once again reiterating the statements they made earlier in the morning. So, with all of that in mind, it is quite clear that the Iranians are back on the path of war, we are largely back on the path of war, and the war is back on. But let me ask all of y'all what y'all are thinking right now about this whole deal, especially considering that the Iranians have made it quite clear they don't want to talk anymore. They just don't feel like talking. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so right now we're seeing that earlier today, U.S. officials claimed that talks with Iran were imminent in Islamabad, and they were sending over a couple of negotiators. And there was also maybe some word that maybe the U.S. vice president might be going as well. But then there was some confusion about that because apparently it was such short notice that Secret Service didn't have enough time to repair, from the sounds of it. So then it was up in the air whether or not the vice president was going to go. So, but all that aside, though, the reports are now saying that Iran's rejected all the talks. So it may not be imperative to show up at all, because it sounds like Iran's not going to show up. So what are your thoughts? 61% said Iran will refuse all peace talks. They are done. While 22% said Iran will probably show up last minute, and 14% said I give it about a 50-50 chance. And I'll be honest, I actually give it a 50-50 chance. Like, it's possible that maybe Iran might send some delegate to this peace talks, but they're not going to have any hope of succeeding. That's the ultimate end goal of the situation right now, is it's not going to succeed. But I will say it's a lot different for Iran to show up last minute than the United States. It takes our people, like 15 plus hours to get over there to Pakistan. It takes Iran's people less than 3 hours to get to Islamabad, Pakistan. So for them, they have the luxury of showing up last minute. The U.S. does not. We have to get a lot more planning into place before we send our people. So that's why I say a 50-50 chance. They might show up last minute, maybe to buy some time possibly, but I wouldn't count on it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'd be with the 60%. I think that the Iranians are going to refuse all peace talks at this point. And I think also it's not going to achieve anything even if they do talk. This is basically going to be a rejection of the talks even if they go to the talks, because they're still going to have their maximalist demands. We're still going to have our maximalist demands. No one's going to compromise. The ceasefire is going to end and the war is going to get back going again. So I'll be honest with y'all, I don't really think this is going to be resolving in any sort of a peaceful conclusion, especially after what happened down in the Gulf of Oman today. It's obvious that we're going to be seeing the continuation of this war here very soon. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, in my opinion, because I think at this point, folks, it's very obvious the war is going to be coming back on. And so with that, it is time for us to get on down and into the Strait of Hormuz, because throughout all of this business that happened today, folks, with the Iranians responding and vowing revenge for the vessel that we hit and seized, and us hitting the vessel and seizing the vessel, is the Strait of Hormuz reopened? No. It's still closed. We did get to see that some tankers did try to make the passage, and they were told to turn around today. This included the vessel, the Meta, and also the G Summer. So we do understand the strait is completely closed at this point. Oil prices are already starting to rise once again as a result. Oil prices had stabilized around the price of around $82 per barrel due to the thoughts or hopes, at least within the oil market, that the situation would be resolved, that peace would return to the Middle East, which is kind of a fleeting sort of a notion, and that the price of oil would once again start to drop due to the flow of the supply that would start to come back out of the Middle East. Turns out that's not going to happen, and the price per barrel of oil has already risen in its pre-market value to about $89 per barrel, showing that about a $7 jump has already occurred before the trading opened today. So we're mostly going to start seeing that the oil prices will once again skyrocket in the WTI and Brent crude markets as a result of the fact that the war is going to be starting again, and there will be no real opening of the Strait of Hormuz, at least anytime soon from what we can tell. So that is the entire situation, folks, and the breakdown of the Hormuz situation in full, which only took us about an hour to cover. So I hope y'all have enjoyed this so far, folks, because I've never talked about such a small place for so long every single night. But I gotta tell y'all, folks, it's pretty fun to talk about. There's always something going on down there, and it's always an interesting news segment, to say the least. Probably one of the most important areas of the world right now is the Strait of Hormuz. But moving us on out of that, we also have other news that's been coming out from around the region. most importantly from the Yemeni Houthis, which have stated that they will be conducting a shutdown of the Bab el-Mandeb, which is the strait through the southern Red Sea, if war begins again between the United States and Iran. Meaning it's fairly likely at this point that once the war resumes, we may see that the Houthis start unsolicited attacks against merchant ships within this area of the Bab el-Mandeb, which will shut down the Suez Canal from largely being used, meaning that around 12% of shipping traffic daily and annually will have to start diverting all the way around Africa to be able to make it between Asia, Europe, and the Americas, which will significantly lengthen their routes, increasing the cost of transportation, increasing the fuel consumption, which the fuel amounts are already somewhat low around the world and are starting to become even more scarce, and it will also lead to the trips becoming more expensive as well, overall, because of the cost of the crew, the cost of the ship, the cost of the fuel, and everything else in between, meaning that we may be seeing that the United States and the Western world gets pinched a little bit by the international shipping crisis that will emerge once the Houthis try and shut down the strait. In other good news, though, we did get to hear that the Gerald R. Ford did return back to its combat station inside of the Middle East. And according to the news that we got today from CBS, the USS Gerald R. Ford has returned to the Middle East along with 2 destroyers, the USS Mahan and the USS Winston S. Churchill, joining the USS Abraham Lincoln that is already operating in the North Arabian Sea. The USS...
see, that's what the Iranians were talking about when they said that it's those terrorist Marines. I mean, how can we claim to be a peaceful military here in the United States if we're sending 2 destroyers? I mean, what peaceful nation has destroyers?
Really? I mean, the audacity of it. Like, you know.
What the audacity? A destroyer? I mean, come on. Like, it should be the peacemaker. We sent 2 peacemakers.
Man, we should have sent the resolvers. That's what we should have sent.
Yes, that sounds very intimidating. That sounds more intimidating than destroyer, actually, to send those 2 revolvers. What you said, resolvers or revolvers?
The resolvers.
Oh, resolvers. Okay.
The revolvers.
We're going to send the resolvers. They're a little bit different. But yeah, go ahead, though. Go ahead.
Man, you said the revolvers. Man, we sending the revolvers. Man, 44 Magnum or 45 Long Colt? That's really the question there. But beyond that, though, the USS Gerald R. Ford has returned back to its combat station. May their laundry rooms forever be non-combustible, and may their journey be swift, and their blows be decisive. So good luck to the Ford. Hopefully we'll be able to see that the laundry rooms do not combust once again spontaneously. We've also been able to hear of heavy Air Force activity by the Israelis somewhere within southern and northern Syria. As we all know, the Israelis are chomping at the bits right now to get dropping a bomb on someone, I'm sure, because there's this little thing called postponing a criminal trial that could go on. For some reason, there's some conflict somewhere. So we'll be seeing that the Israelis are probably popping into this whole conflict once it starts over again at second one of the new war, or more so the continuation of the current one. We also got to see that the United States Air Force is also operating out of Paphos Airport in Cyprus, as we were able to see that 4 C-17s were spotted today on photography. Interesting there. Very interesting. C-17s in Cyprus. How bizarre. Anyways, moving us on out of the Republic of Cyprus, it is time for us to get to some other bit of last piece of news that we have out of the Middle East today. And boy, folks, is it interesting. Up near the Caspian Sea, in the area around Gumbed-e-Kavus, which I found in this area up here, this is the city. So we're not believing that the shipbuilders is here, because, to point this out for everyone, that would pose some logistical issues. The fact that the city is in the middle of a whole bunch of fields and flat plains makes it really hard to open a shipbuilders here. Building ships generally requires water to be able to put the boat in, or the ship in, and so opening up a shipyard directly inside of Gumbed-e-Kavus would be pretty difficult, because once you get done building the ship, there's no water to put the ship in. So we believe that the actual shipbuilders is somewhere along the coastline out here somewhere within this province, but we don't know exactly where, and I wasn't really able to find it before the show. We did get to see that it did catch on fire, though, and we don't know what caught it on fire, but the fire was massive.
Oh, dang. Look at that. Oh, there's ships already smoking that hadn't even built it yet.
I guess you'd say that they were chuffed to finish the job. Ah!
Man, I'll tell you what, those Iranians said that they were smoking on the U.S. I don't think they're doing that. It looks like they're smoking on themselves, it looks like.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, they smoking them, but they ain't smoking the good ones. The ones that they would want to smoke, they smoking themselves. Not really a good thing to do. But a lot of people are currently also talking about something else right now, folks. Something else that's equally important. That whole Hormuz situation, that damn Hormuz. We're coming back to it. A lot of people are wondering, what should we do to clear out the strait? And currently, we've been able to hear that there might be a small solution to the problem. Right now, the U.S. Navy is allegedly, according to the Wall Street Journal, deploying underwater demining drones around the strait to be able to try and clear out the anti-ship mines. Now, this is one way to try and clear out physically the waters of the Hormuz, is by getting rid of the minefield. However, I do have to point out, folks, that the minefield is not the only deterrent that the Iranians have to shipping through the area. The Iranians also have anti-ship surface drones, anti-ship air-based drones, and anti-ship missiles as well to be able to fire at anything that tries to go through the strait. Meaning that if we clear the minefield, we have cleared out the passive threat that is posed to shipping within the area, but we haven't cleared out any of the active threats on shore, like the ones I just mentioned, from being able to fire at and destroy or heavily damage ships that attempt to pass through the strait, much like they did yesterday. None of the 3 ships that were damaged or attacked yesterday by the Iranians were hit by a mine. One of them was directly attacked by fast attack boats, and the other 2 were apparently hit by anti-ship missiles or drones that caused some damage to the vessels, but they were able to turn around and flee the area. So, while clearing out the minefield is certainly a step in the right direction, it isn't clearing out the strait to where the traffic will once again flow like water, pun intended. But Matthew, are people thinking that this minefield clearing idea is a good idea, or are they thinking that it requires more, or are they thinking that it won't do anything at all?
Okay, so actually, it's more than just an idea. According to the reports, the U.S. Navy has actually already deployed underwater autonomous drones in the Strait of Hormuz. We're not told how many, and also they're being very secretive about what these drones even are and how many are in the strait. And also, we're not even really sure what they do. All we know is they can locate the mines, but we don't know if they can destroy the mines. That's the question right now. That's a big question mark. Is will they actually get rid of the mines, or are they simply going to map out where they are? So, do you think it'll work? 44% said yes, it sounds like the solution for whatever it's worth. 29% said it might work, but I need more info. And 20% said no, more is needed to demine the strait. So my best guess is I think these drones are simply there to map out the area that the mines could be. So that way later on the US can send in additional assets to actually destroy and eliminate the mines out of the strait. I'm not really convinced that the drones have the ability to destroy the underwater sea mines, but it's possible it could, but we're not being told if it has that capability or not. Now, I would assume that these drones are probably new and they're probably classified to a certain extent. That's probably why we aren't getting much information about it. So I would say I'm with the 29%. It might work, but we simply don't have enough information about this right now. And also, I mean, truthfully, it could be just hype. That's also another option. They could be saying this just to create some hype that maybe they're going to be removed soon. We just don't know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that more is needed to demine the strait. I would have to be with the 20% because it's certainly a step in the right direction, but there's a lot of threats that are posed right now to the Strait of Hormuz, and clearing out the minefield isn't going to see that shipping resumes through the area. We have to clear out all of the threats, including the minefield, to be able to see that the strait is reopened. So I'd have to say that if this is underway at the moment, huge amount of applause. It is a step in the right direction, and one of the first that we've ever seen dealing with the situation directly, which is great to see, but kind of being honest with y'all, knowing how the current administration works, if they did clear the minefield, they probably announced that the whole situation has been resolved, everything's fine, it's completely safe now because the mines are gone, and everyone should go through, and it's not our problem anymore, we fixed it. And then, the first ship that would try and go through would get hit by an anti-ship missile or something like that, and then we'd be back to square one once again, because they're almost always at this point looking for an easy way to claim victory up there in Washington right now, and they're not really looking at the situation in the full big picture, I guess you could call it. So that's why I'm saying, it's good, but it's not going to fully, quote unquote, demine the area because they still have the surface threats and the anti-ship threats that they have. And we need to see that all of that's dealt with. We can't just deal with one part of a 6-part threat and then say that it's over. That's like having that's like saying, you're getting attacked by a bear. So you clip it with like a spear in its foot and you go, I defeated the bear. It's like, and then it mauls you afterwards because you didn't really do much of anything to it rather than kind of poke it. That's kind of a similar situation with this right here. So once again, folks, I had to say step in the right direction if that is happening, and I'm not sure if it is, but if it is happening, step in the right direction, but a lot more would need to be done to make the strait clear and safe enough for us to even conduct convoy duties through the area, much less to see that it's safe enough for any vessel to be able to head on through. And also, Evan Freiberger just threw in a good comment. He said, not to mention they can just lay more mines. And that's also true. They can just lay more mines, meaning that the demining efforts would either have to be continuous because they could just fire more into the strait, or we would have to destroy the forces on the coastline that are able, or inland that are able to fire the mines into the Strait of Hormuz, and then stop them at the source from being able to launch more mines. But nevertheless, the answer is still, this is good. It's, great. It's a good step in the right direction, one of the first, but a lot more would be needed to actually make it straight. Actually make it safe, not straight. But moving us on out of the Strait of Hormuz, which I've said the word straight a million times at this point tonight, it is time for us to finally move on out of this small geographical area, which is gripping the world right now. And it's time for us to move on into some other news that we've been able to hear throughout the entirety of the world over the course of this day. We have been able to hear that within the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, aka North Korea, aka Land of the Fatty, we have seen that they have been testing a new delivery system on board the Hwasong 11. They really did take some beautiful pictures of this. I will actually admit these were actually pretty decently done. But from what we heard, the Fatty oversaw the successful test of the operational tactical Hwasong 11RA or the Hwasong 11D missiles from the Hwasong Po 11RA missile system, and equipped with the new cluster-type warheads. They're taking some lessons from the Islamic Republic of Iran. 5 tactical ballistic missiles were launched towards a designated target around an island at a range of 136 kilometers, delivering a concentrated strike over a 12.5 to 13 hectare area and clearly demonstrating their combat effectiveness. At least that's what the North Koreans claimed. We were able to see them launching these missiles, which oddly enough will look a lot like an Iskander, to be straight up with y'all, from what appears to be large cinder blocks on the ground, which, happen to know they're upgrading their, homemade rocketry programs. They evolved from the little spindly like metal pole that they launched these things from to now they have a cinder block base for them. They're really evolving. We've also seen another picture here of all of the generals around, watching the missile launch. There's the Fatty, of course, you can tell because the ground is depressing below him into like a bowl. And we can also see that his daughter is right beside him as well, which they're now grooming to be the next leader of North Korea, because there's word coming out, folks, that because Kim Jong-un is so fat, his health is failing, and he might die sometime here soon, so they're getting his daughter... Huh?
I said, damn.
Yeah, I mean, that's the rumors that are coming out. That's why his daughter is becoming so out there, at least in state media publications, is because they're trying to groom her for the public to see that, yes, this is the successor to the current Kim Jong-un, and she's going to take over once he dies. So she's actually going to be the first female leader of North Korea. But once again, a lot of people are always saying, that Kim Yo-jong looks like she could eat the head off of Kim Jong-un's daughter. So, she might just try and seize power after he dies. And we don't know how that's going to go. But,
Grossing the hell out of him, I say. Also, by the way, I mean, look at this. This is like a family photo for the ages right here. The sunset, the missile, all their family and friends here gathered for a nice picnic setting. It's really something else, really. This is a family picnic here that most people could never reach.
Man, and you know what's even more incredible? That fake grass mat that they rolled out for them to sit on that ends right there, and you can see the dead grass and all that, which makes it look like it's not blessed by the great leader. It's just fake plastic grass that they probably bought from a Lowe's and then had smuggled into the country through nefarious means. Like, where did they get the artificial turf from, man? That's my question.
I tell you what, he may be a vicious bastard, but I tell you what, he lives up to his name. He is the Rocket Man.
Also, here's another picture here showing the cluster round going off. I don't know what this island is, but I mean, they hit it, so I guess it works, but, would it really work, and how many of them do they have? We don't really know. So it worked for the test, and that's all we know for now. But moving us on from all of that, North Korea, it is time for us, folks, to move on out of this whole North Korean shebang deal going on here. And it's time for us to move on and over into the United States of America, because we do have a little bit of an update for y'all on the E6B Mercury deal, and it appears that it actually is some form of a doomsday drill from what we're getting. A significant amount of broadcasts were transmitted by the E6B Mercuries. We were able to hear another one. Once again, there was actually several that came out, but this is just one of them. And it appears that it might have been some sort of a preparedness drill for the E6B Mercuries, possibly, from what we can tell. But once again, folks, we're not able to decrypt any of the messages and actually understand what they mean, because it's just a sequence of letters and numbers that you would have to have a little binder filled with the sequences and numbers of and the ciphers to be able to know exactly what those messages are supposed to mean. But it appears that it was some form of a doomsday drill to make sure that force preparedness and our nuclear deterrence would be capable if it ever is tested. Say, for example, someone tries to conduct a strategic nuclear attack on the United States of America. But here's another one of those little messages, by the way, just for y'all to hear it. And apparently these were actually overlapping messages from a ground communications relay and the E6 Mercury simultaneously.
Go. Station 6. Station. Mike. This is Bravo. 4. Sierra. 4. Alpha. 3. Mike. 4. Bravo. Delta. Sierra. Oscar. 3. Bravo. 5. Quebec. Romeo. 5. 4. Quebec. Delta.
Wasn't that so cool?
Oh, dang. I just got what they were trying to say. It's their Uber Eats order.
Oh, it's the verification code. Like, it's the verification code.
It was just two-factor authentication. That was all it was the whole time, folks. No need to worry. Don't worry. They call it the doomsday plane, but, there's still people. They got to eat.
They gotta eat, and you not you when you're hungry. Like, so they gotta stay well fed, otherwise the nuclear missiles could get launched. But it does appear that it was just a drill, folks, so, once again, on the money, no one's dying tonight or dying yesterday night, because a lot of people, folks, were going ham with us. I saw on the internet, like, not our sources, like OSINT, Defender, and I think it's Neat Intel. They were just putting out the broadcast, but there were, of course, some people out there, as usual. Oh my God, they're transmitting the messages. The nuclear bombs are going to be flying, and y'all aren't dead. No one else is dead. No nuclear missiles have been launched. Really, no missiles have been launched at all. One Iranian tanker was hurt. That was a whole story. But outside of that, it's just some sort of a drill from what we can tell. So nothing crazy. Don't worry, folks. Don't be concerned. You're going to be fine. You can kiss your children when they go to bed tonight and sleep soundly, because you're going to wake up tomorrow and the sun will still be rising and everyone will still be alive. So with that, it is time for us to move on out of the United States of America and time for us to move on into Europe. We have a little bit of last bits of news to cover in Europe of significant U.S. airlifts going to the Middle East, but that's really going to be rounding out our Middle East news for the day. We're about to be moving on into all of the major news that we got out of the Russian Federation and Ukraine today in the ongoing war in Ukraine. But before we get to that, Matthew, I understand that this fundraiser has been doing absolutely tremendously tonight. What total are we at right now?
All right, so right now we are just shy, about $25 shy of $1,900 raised of the $2,500 goal. So we are well over halfway to goal right now. We're getting very close to that, by the way. We'll probably hit the goal, I would imagine, in less than 30 minutes, probably even less than that now that we shouted it out once again. So we'll see, but so far going tremendously swell. And to call off our top donor so far, we have had a $300 donation from Josh Rubin, and a huge shout to Josh for so far the largest donation of the night to Wounded Warriors. We also see a $112 donation from Give Up Now, as well as a $111 donation from Give Up Now once again, also extremely generous. We also have an 84 from Old Warrior Fella, as well as a 50 from Wubba Actual, and a 50 from Craig Jones, Skunk Works, as well as Cheryl Jones, Dax Salmon, Alan Diana Storm, as well as a 50 from Chef Danny B and Sadata Hosoda. And so far, those are the top donors of the night, and the fundraiser is really steaming forward, I must say, and we appreciate that very much from the LSA as usual. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, an absolutely incredible and amazing thing to see. that so many of y'all have supported this fundraiser tonight. We're only about $600 away or so from the $2,500 goal. And I got to say that that's really something, folks. For years now, for over 4 years, we have run Sunday night fundraisers practically every single Sunday, every single weekend, to be able to try and support some nonprofit in the world that's doing some good for folks that we cover the news on every day. And every single weekend, every single Sunday, we surpass those fundraiser goals. And I have to say that we're absolutely blown away to see that once again we're getting incredibly close to raising the fundraiser goal tonight. And I've got to say humongous thanks to everyone that we were able to shout out, the top donors of the fundraiser, and also those who we were not able to shout out. Each and every single one of y'all makes your mark on this fundraiser. Whether you're throwing in $1, a couple of dollars, or even thousands of dollars like we've seen sometimes, every single person plays their role. And we are massively thankful and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all supporting these fundraisers, as it helps for American veterans who have given their all to be given some in return by the citizenry of this nation to see that they're able to be rehabilitated and largely try and fix what's broken so that way they can try and get back to carrying on as normal a life they can after they have given everything in the name of this country. And so humongous thanks to every single one of y'all so much once again for supporting this fundraiser, and I hope that here soon we're able to start screaming that we hit the goal. And so a massive thanks to everyone once again, and it is time for us to move on and into a couple of questions. We're going to be getting 3 of them here before we start moving on and into the rest of our news. And a huge shout out to Chef Jenny B, who just threw in a 50 right here, right now, as we're getting on into these live chat questions. Holy moly. But with that, we are on to the live chats. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so if you're throwing in a super chat tonight, by the way, we are going to save those for the last question segment to have time to rabbit hole on them. But in the meantime, though, let's jump into our first of 3 live chat questions. And this one goes to Carl. He said, do we know what type of mines that Iran is using in the Strait of Hormuz?
They are using the Maham 3 and the Maham 7. The Maham 3 is actually a fairly older type of drone, older type of mine, if I remember correctly. It's what a lot of people would think of when they think of like a traditional sea mine. But they rest several feet under the water. They are generally they're able to track down and attach themselves to a magnetic hull as long as it passes somewhat nearby, and they also have time fuses on them, and those time fuses can be timed to go off days or even weeks after that vessel left the area where the mine attached to the hull. So that is one of the major mine types that we see right now inside of the international waters of the Hormuz, but we've also heard that in some areas there might be the Mahan 7, which is a smaller anti-ship mine that has a general conical shape that apparently is able to deflect sonar fairly well from what we know, and it gives a very small signature or readback if you try and detect one with sonar, and it also has some very similar abilities outside of that to the Mahan 3 or the Maham 3. It's just that it is a smaller explosive inside of the 7 instead of the 3. So that's generally what we understand to be right now inside the Strait of Hormuz, according to the information that we have, and both of those are fairly dangerous, if not fatal, to any vessel that ends up running upon one, as it would cause such a large rupture, especially that for the Maham 3, that it would most likely sink the vessel that was hit by that mine directly. So I hope that does address that the best that I can. A great question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the second question of the segment. But holy moly, we're over 2,000 raised now. We're getting very close to that $2,500 goal. If only we could hit that $2,500 goal, folks, before we move on and into the rest of our news. Wouldn't that be dreamy? Oh, man, that'd be something else right there. That'd be something else. We'll hopefully see that that does happen. But with that in mind, we are on to the second question of this segment.
And we also have one from none other than Army Doc. He said, what do you think the Marines will find on that vessel that they seized in the Strait of Hormuz?
They will most likely find normal cargoes. They might even find an empty vessel that was attempting to load up with cargo from Iran. Or, you know what? Let me go look at the video of that vessel, because I don't know exactly what the Maham, oh, not the Maham, but the Tuska is. Let me go look at that footage here real quick. Oh, coulda. It's a container ship. That's interesting.
And you know what's in a container? Stuff.
Contraband. Like, man, like I can.
Well, not necessarily. We don't know. What to see what the Marines say about that.
Well, I mean, like as far as potential for something, Containers are the number one source, by the way, folks, of illegal contraband that enters most countries. And this is actually something that was an unintended caveat to the container, because back in the day, folks, y'all wouldn't know this, but back in the day, the marketing for shipping containers, like the 40-foot standard international shipping containers, was that they were lockable, and so nobody could get into them and steal stuff. Because back in the day, it was very common for a lot of cargo to become a lot lighter on its way overseas. Because back in the day, in the era of break bulk shipping, when you basically have to load up a ship like a moving van, the longshoremen had some pretty nifty little fingers, and they would happen to grab some stuff pretty commonly. And Matthew, you would love to hear this one, man. It's actually hilarious. They would grab only the finest stuff. If there was ever any sorts of crates of cigars that they were loading, you could always expect that about 20% of those cigars would never make it to their end destination. If there was any whiskey or brandy or any sort of alcohol in one of those crates, or being shipped by anything, you would always know that every longshoreman that handled that crate would pop it open, take a couple out, slip it into their jacket, and then they would close it back up like nothing had happened. And so back in the day, the container was actually marketed in a way to say, hey, do you have any valuable cargoes that you're scared that some bastard longshoreman is going to rip out of the thing and steal? Well, you can just lock the shipping container and nobody can get into it, and the only person who's going to get into it are the people that you're shipping this to, so you don't have to, lose any of your cargo on the way over. And so that was a great thing, but it turns out that not long after, some groups, like the cartels, actually started to realize that that is a humongous advantage. You can load up a container with nothing but cocaine, and generally it's never going to be open. There's just not enough customs authorities to go around and unlock every single container. That would be incredibly slow and laborious. It would slow down the logistics and supply chains. And so most containers are never unlocked and inspected, and they just go straight into their port of entry. They're loaded on an 18-wheeler and then sent to wherever they're supposed to go. And that's still...
Actually, that's not really true. If there's narcotics or something like that in a container, there's Customs and Border Patrol, which will have dogs that go around sniffing and stuff like that. Now, granted, they can't sniff everything, but there's ways to detect that stuff. It's not as open as you're thinking.
Well, I mean, can a dog sniff through steel?
I mean, yeah, they can get. I mean, they're not airtight containers. You can get those smells out of the container.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, would they really? I mean, it's like that was actually one of the big things back in the day, and that's why they started to send around the dogs, is because drugs were being smuggled in this country through the shipping containers, and a whole bunch of other illegal contraband as well being shipped around the world, for that matter. Anything and everything would go into a container, get locked up, and basically nobody would ever inspect it. And on top of that, Matt, you have to remember that there are millions of containers that are moving through ports every month, and so it would be pretty tough to be able to inspect them. Especially, let me show you this, because this is the problem with the whole drug sniffing dog idea. These container stacks here are about 4 or 5 tall. The sniffing dog is not going to be able to sniff out the 5th container on 5 up from the ground and be able to know that there's cocaine or any other contraband in it, for that matter. So most of these containers are very rarely ever going to get spotted as far as carrying contraband. They can be, but it's exceptionally rare, especially compared to someone having to physically handle it like they did back in the break bulk days, when the longshoremen would literally have to take each piece by the hundreds of pounds and move it in and out of the ships, which would take days. So generally, with containers, that's why it's important to point out that the Tuska is a container ship. The containers could be carrying anything. Like, not saying that the Tuska is carrying contraband, but in theory it could be carrying anything. And so who's to say that the Chinese didn't load up a container on that ship that might have some weapons parts inside of it, or something else along those points that would be considered illegal contraband that's being shipped into Iran? And the answer to that is, you don't really know. We'll have to see how that ends up turning out. And also, Matthew saying X-rays and stuff, that exists nowadays, but back in the day, like, I'm talking like historically, back in the day, none of that stuff existed because nobody knew that would be a problem. That's why I was speaking of historically.
We're talking about today. We're talking about today, though. Like, today, though, there's plenty of methods to check that stuff. The dogs, the X-rays. I mean, they've got other stuff, too, to detect it. They got a whole way. And also, they can flag certain containers that are more suspicious than others. So it's definitely something that's locked down. It's not airtight, but they got it locked down pretty good.
But if it's locked down pretty good, then how in the world do drugs keep flooding into this country in like the thousands of tons every year? Because they're not bringing all those in by boat. And they're also not just walking those across the border every day. I mean, they'd have to be walking hundreds of trips a day to get over that volume. They're clearly coming in through an ability to transport a large volume pretty much right under someone's nose, and probably still being shipped in by shipping container, I'd assume.
Well, according to the government, they were bringing it in by those the dinghies. We're bringing them in off the coast. That was apparently where most of it was coming in, if you believe the government on that. But I mean, there's plenty of ways. I mean, they brought it in by small aircraft. Like, I mean, small aircraft, they can fly in pretty much undetected when they're flying low. So that's a problem as well. Also, the dinghies going up to the coast, that's another problem as well. So I mean, there's loads of ways that those things can get in outside of the container situation. The containers are probably the hardest way, I'd imagine, out of all of them.
One second, I want to pull this up really quickly. Let's see here. See here. So according to an article that was put out by Insight Crime in 2021, they were still talking about how containers are one of the primary methods of shipping contraband, especially narcotics, around the world, because generally most of the containers aren't inspected. And there's a lot of articles out there about that. I mean, like, there are some detection methods, but to be able to inspect all of these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of containers that move in and out of the country every single week or every single month is a pretty tall order, considering that there's not that many customs authorities and that many port authorities to be able to try and conduct an inspection on every single container. Like, they conduct spot inspections, like they do here and there on suspicious vehicles crossing the land border between the U.S. and Mexico, but they don't go and thoroughly inspect each and every one of them, because it would just be too laborious.
Yeah, probably not all of them, but they inspect a good chunk.
But as far as this goes here, though, like I don't really think we have like any port-based X-ray scanners or sniffing dogs that are going to be on board the Tuska. So I think that we're going to kind of be back in the land of the 70s, at least in that instance, and they're probably going to have to try and crack open each container somehow and look into them, or start sifting through them to try and see if they can find anything. And they might find something, who knows? But considering that it's a container ship, literally anything could be on it, as long as it's not, like oil and whatnot. That would be carried on a specialized oil tanker. But we would have to generally see what they find, and we'll see what the Marines announce. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least at the moment right now. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping to our last of the live chat questions for this one segment here, this one goes to none other than Howard Mendelson. He said, can't one guy, like in the coastal mountains in Iran with like some type of RPG or something, isn't that a problem that they could simply close the strait that way?
Not really. RPGs actually have a very limited range, usually only about, I think at maximum, like the maximum usable range for an RPG is like 400 meters, which means that he might be able to try and shoot at a pontoon boat that's right on the coastline, but he would also have to be on the beach to be able to do that. So in general, it would take some form of longer range weaponry, either an air, like a ground launched one-way attack drone, sea-based one-way attack drone, or an anti-ship missile to really be able to physically control or close the strait. In a way, like, and this is also one that really wouldn't work too well, you could technically use an anti-tank guided missile to be able to try and target and hit ships, but they would have to be within 2 or 3 miles of the coast for you to be able to hit them, which means that they're well within Iranian territorial waters. And if the straits reopened, like the minefields cleared, and there's not really any anti-ship threats left in the conventional sense, no ships are going to be getting that close to the Iranian coast to be able to see that an anti-tank guided missile could be fired at them. So generally, as long as most of the conventional anti-ship threats that are being seen right now are knocked out, there's really no way for the Iranians to just simply shut down the Strait of Hormuz, like with an RPG or a ATGM or anything else along those lines. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I know right now. And a great question, by the way. That's actually a really good one. But moving us on out of the Middle East, it is now time for us, folks, to move on to our last little bit of this little situation in the Middle East, and then we're going to be moving on into the war in Ukraine, because we have a lot of news to cover up in there. Moving us on and into the area of the Balkans, the airlifts by the United States are still ongoing, and quite heavily for that matter. We have seen that a large amount of C-17 Globemasters are flying in and out of the Balkans, and it does appear that there are significant replenishment operations underway by the United States Air Force's Strategic Airlift Command to be able to try and reinforce our forces in the Middle East for the war that is to come. With that, it's now time for us to finally move on into the war in Ukraine. A totally different topic, a more civilized war of a more civilized age. I'm just kidding, it's actually a barbaric war, but the Ukrainians fight it in a way that makes it look classy. Moving us on into Moscow, we've been able to get news today. News that according to Zelensky, he claims that the Russians are preparing for a major mobilization and they're restricting social media to try and prevent riots once they announce this major mobilization. We've also been able to hear within Moscow today something else inside of the city that's actually wildly interesting. Putin's motorcade was skirting around the city and burning straight up rubber for reasons unknown, but we'll show you all this clip here because it is comedy to watch it.
Oh. Gotta go fast. You gotta see if you can endanger the public.
Man, boy, maybe we can slam Putin in this limo into a head on the wall at 130 miles an hour because we missed the right turn, boy. It's like, how, like, I gotta tell you, folks, this is just stupid at every degree, like, the way that they speed around. In Russia, by the way, give a little bit of context here, by law, government officials, especially in Moscow, are given the legal permission to be able to break every single traffic law and travel at whatever speed they deem necessary, as long as they are claiming that it's within the scope of their official governmental duties. So this is not breaking any speed limits, and they're not breaking the law doing this. This is actually permitted under Russian law for government motorcades like this to go flying down highways at 100 miles an hour. The thing about it, though, is that it's wildly unsafe for everybody in the area, and it's also wildly unsafe for those people who are in the motorcade like Putin. Like, say, for example, you know, like, a car pulls out into the street somehow, and it hits a car. That car then goes flying into the path of the limo at 100 miles an hour, and then that limo goes careening into a building at 100 miles an hour with Putin in it. You can kind of see where that becomes wildly unsafe for the pedestrian, the average citizen driver, and the motorcade as well. It's crazy that nobody has been seriously injured or died in recent memory in the Russian Federation with how they do this. But we believe that Putin was getting involved in some meeting somewhere with some other government officials in Moscow, and apparently that's what the motorcade was moving around in between for, was moving him from point A to point B from the meetings and then wherever he went afterwards. We don't know what the meetings are for at this moment, but it does certainly appear that they were breaking necks going at the speeds they were through Moscow streets. Moving us on out of that whole Moscow deal, it's now time for us to move on and down into the southern Russia and Crimea, believe it. The Ukrainians conducted a major drone attack on the Russian Federation overnight. Ole mole! And they were really...
Oh my God, it looked like they hit... Oh wow, they really hit it hard. Look at that. The whole place is swarming.
Man, Crimea River, and they will Crimea River, bleed. We also heard that Krasnodar itself was under attack, along with Anapa, Novorossiysk, Gelendzhik, Tuapse, and Sochi. Oh, I bet you the videos out of Tuapse were showing a peaceful night. The Ukrainians did just attack it the other day. I'm sure nothing bad happened here tonight. Oh, yeah, bad things happen. Would you look at that? Oh, I hear the drone.
Sounds like a dose of trouble.
Oh, bleh! Oh, bro! The explosion hit right when the video ended. And then we got to see that there was a fire at Tuapse. Here's some more air defense footage, by the way. And then we got to see the fire. Oh, boy. Oh, Briaga. And then we got to see what really happened in Tuapse afterwards, which was... let's see, this fire right here. And this came out right when we were live on air.
It looks like hell is burning over.
It looks like the whole Tuapse oil depot has been knocked out, and that's good news, everyone. Very good news. The Ukrainians are trying to cause as much economic damage as possible to the Russian Federation by knocking out their abilities to load ships up with oil and then ship that out into the greater world, and it does appear that they are seeing some pretty decent success at this moment in being able to knock out Russian oil loading ports. Moving us on out of that bit of news, we also saw that the fires in Sevastopol are keeping the home fires burning.
That's music, by the way.
Oh, I thought that was like a foghorn, man. I was like,
That's a Russian idea of music.
bro, it's just a sound of depression, like just straight up.
Man, they're like, this is a little number right here I like to call Ruski depression, bled.
Man, you're on the road trip as a kid, and your dad goes, "It's time to listen to good music." It's like, man, this is really gets that Russian feel in your blood, you know, like real depression. But
someone needs to add some bars over that right there. A Russian rapper, like put some bars over that little track. I tell you what, that'd be a hit.
man, I feel like, man, at that point, you ought to just go back to tradition and get to that song that goes, "Chornaya mo, это полить, стазит степи, о ты милый." You know, like that one. You ought to just go back to that at that point.
I tell you, the Russians love to wallow in depression like a pig in mud. Like they really do. It's like their whole culture is like just like really twisted around like being depressed. Like they kind of like find like comfort in it or something. Their music is depressing, most of it.
Man, like every single Russian piece of literature, folks, and all of their songs is like, life sucks and it's shit and it never gets better. You're like, well, sort of like Kevin? No, sucks. Do you want to drink? Like, it's like, okay, it's like, I guess they just love that stuff. I don't know. But we did get to see that the little oil depot in Sevastopol is on fire and burning. Nice to see. We did get to see that attacked yesterday. Moving us on out of Sevastopol, it's now time for us to move on from the Ukrainian drone attacks in the Russian Federation and the occupied territories, and it's now time for us to move on and into Kyiv, as we did get to hear further news today. According to the former Foreign Minister Kuleba, he stated that Belarus may be preparing to open a second front and at the same time is strengthening its air defense, expecting strikes, which is giving us an idea that Belarus may actually be preparing to enter the war, or this is some sort of a feint to divert Ukrainian forces towards the Belarusian border when Belarus actually has no intention of joining the war. We also got to see that the comet did appear over Kyiv last night, right there. Look, a shooting star, make a wish. I wish for those Russian bastards to lose. So, like, man, like, blow up dwarfs again, bled. There it is again. Look at that. Magical. Wow. That's incredible.
It's a comet. That's a very straight flying comet right there.
Wait a minute, that's no comet. Oh my god, it's an erection. But anyways, moving us on from that clip, it's now time for us to move on into the casualty report because we did get a good one today, folks. Believe it. Moving us on and into the news that we have over the course of the past 24 hours, we have some significant losses. Holy moly!
Oh, whoa. Holy moly. They got 2 bobcats. Look at that. 2 of them in one day. That's crazy. Honestly, the drought of bobcats is over with. It looks like they're getting them all the time these days. They're finding at least 2 every day. I like that. A 2 group. Hit them in 2 group. Tell us more.
Man, over the course of the past 24 hours, we were able to see that according to Miss DC, Keeper of the Records is almost a duplicate of the 18th of April. Average troop losses stay above 1,000 a day. Tanks and APCs are above average. And a correction, it's plus 82, not 62 for artillery, and it is tied as the 10th highest daily loss. Over the past 24 hours, we were able to see that 1,070 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 10 APCs, 203 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 62 artillery pieces, 2,019 drones, 5 MLRSs, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, an incredibly wonderful and great thing to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are still inflicting high losses on the Russians, because eventually, after, enough of them get wiped out, they'll finally start to think maybe at some point that it's best to go home, but we haven't seen it yet, but maybe it'll happen eventually. Moving us on up and towards the area of the Kupiansk front, we also get to see the Ukrainian engineers of the 47th Brigade targeting and hitting Russian forces, and also hitting us with a millisecond there of absolute ear-splitting music. We did get to see this house get blown up. Up to your mat, blade! Oh!
Oh my goodness. They really took that house down. Took the roof.
Man. This right here, man, this really makes me feel like it's that hour to say, you and me are still friends, right? Random person in chat. And then do that every day for like the next 400 days. Like really that kind of an hour right here. But we can also see the Ukrainians hitting another position of the Russians near Kupiansk, bled.
Lubyansk on Slivansk.
It's Slavyansk. He said
Yes.
Slavansk.
That's something.
What do you think this is, Romania? Man, that's like this in Romania.
Oh man. The last time somebody said, "Oh man, Romania, let's check out what's happening there," they saw something that people wish they could unsee.
Man, last time I heard of someone saying, let's check out Romania, they accidentally checked out Fort Dix live on air. Crazy thing how that happened, you know? And Matthew, what do you mean? Oh, it's Fort Dix, like the prison. D-I-X. What are you talking about? Get your mind out of the gutter. Jeez! Louise, Matthew, there's people watching here. But anyway, she also, apparently this is a little spicy. Sorry, folks, I thought it looked normal to me. But moving us on down and towards the area of the next city, we also got to see a little interesting deal down here. According to some Russian military bloggers, they have claimed the following. But unfortunately, everything is like that. Just started the whole saying off like that. I don't know who starts a sentence like that, but what's even worse is that in some areas, our side is economizing on drones due to their shortage, while the Ukrainian armed forces can deploy 20 to 30 FPVs in a short period of time for one landing. Now, probably, the average ratio of FPVs is 3 to 1, with the Ukrainians being able to field 3 drones for every 1 Russian drone on the front. That doesn't sound like winning numbers. That sounds like the Russians are starting to lose the firepower advantage that they had for years because of their conventional artillery, and now they're losing that to unorthodox and unconventional drone forces. Really nice to hear. But moving us on from that, we've also seen a lot has gone down on the Konstantinivka front today. Apparently a little too spicy to show. Maybe this one is not too spicy to show. And this was from the 3rd Territorial Defense Battalion, which was able to inflict some decent losses on Russian armed forces today near to the Konstantinivka front. Let us watch and witness the Ukrainian firepower and the destruction of the Russian armed forces, which have continued to try and conduct their merciless attacks and assaults onto Ukrainian territory and increase the suffering of the Ukrainian people. Here we can see our brave patriots of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the AFU, mighty and bold, continuing to dissuade and stop Russian attacks by using the maximum amount of lethal force possible to ensure that the Russian Federation's armed forces cease to exist and wither away on the battlefield. I took my talking points today, folks, from the Secretary of War. We are looking for increased lethality, not tepid legality.
We're not looking to get caught up on mere legal disagreements. We're trying to be hardcore.
We want the U.S. military to conduct less crying and more frying.
Is my shirt tight enough? Is my shirt tight enough?
Oh, man. Where's the FBI
Should I size
director?
up one size? Like, is it, I mean, am I about to rip the threads out of the shirt? Should I size up to a large?
Oh, man. Well, no, absolutely not, Matthew, because we all know that every single real man has to wear shirts that are so tight that you can see, like, their, basically everything, you know? But anyways, with that, we can see here the Ukrainian armed forces also in the Konstantinivka front getting some work done today. Dropping some bomblets on Russian positions. Oh, please. I wonder where the FBI director is at right now. Hopefully he's not locked into any place, where no one can access him, I hope. But you see that the Ukrainians are still continuing to hit the positions with great effect.
Also, by the way, just to shout this out, we are about $200 roughly away from the goal, getting very close right here to helping out the wounded soldiers with wounded warriors. Getting very close to it. $200 away almost, getting very close.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful, Blair. We are getting so close to Fundraiser goal. Can we hit it? Yes, we can. There we can. Chef down a bit, run another 20. Let's all rally around, comrades, and let's get Fundraiser up to 2,500 for Wounded Warrior Project. Wonderful thing to see. Oh my God, we just hit the Fundraiser, did we?
Wait, we're $2 away.
Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
Somebody could whip out a $2 bill and fill that gap right there. You know, one of those rare $2 bills. So let's see. I think we're about to hit it here in just a second. Give it just a second.
You know, Matthew, I actually heard that Mujtaba Hemeni and a $2 bill have something in common, but I can't get to the punchline of that joke here on there. But beyond that, though, we're $2 away. We're $2 away, everyone. All things aside, we're from reaching this fundraiser goal here. And hey, look, folks, for the money y'all spending to be here, this thing's a riot. So let's see here. Let's see if we can hit the $2 fundraiser goal. It's literally just $2 left, folks. It's $2 here. We're so close. We're so close. We're just around the corner here. We're just around the corner. Oh, we hit the goal.
The goal has been smashed harder than Iran's military during the last segment of war. And I tell you what, the smashing that's coming up on Iran, I tell you what, pause. It's going to be a big one. I think it's going to be a big one. But the fundraiser goal has been smashed. We are now well over the goal, and we have skyrocketed over the goal. Look at that. It's at 26-12 right now. Fantastic work.
Oh, my lordy. I got to tell you, folks. I think I'm going to have to sit down. I actually already am sitting down, but this is crazy. We hit the fundraiser goal. Can y'all believe that, folks? I got to give y'all a humongous shout out to everyone. Also, all the people who are massively supporting this fundraiser so far for getting this fundraiser the way it is. It's unbelievable. We hit another $2,500 fundraiser goal, and we're now well beyond it. I'm sure we're at 2.7 or 2.8 thousand at this point. I'm pretty sure, and it's a wonderful, an incredible thing to see. I gotta say, beautiful, really beautiful. And a humongous shout out and a thanks to everyone in the Lee Spring Army who has been making this possible tonight and has once again seen that another fundraiser goal was surpassed to help out the wounded veterans of the United States of America through the Wounded Warriors Project. So a humongous thanks to all of y'all so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to return on back into our news in y'all's honor. We were able to see that the 25th Airborne Brigade was hitting Russian forces around Pokrovsk. Oh, here they go. Oh, what is this?
Oh, wow. It's a horror film.
It's an enemy drone, blade. Blow it to pieces. Maybe even Reese's Pieces, blade.
Oh, they dropped they hit it.
Up to you, Matt, blade. Oh, another one. Oh, blade. Oh, what took the blade? What took the? I gotta tell you, they're not playing around here, Matthew. They are serious. They are very serious, Blade.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, they're really serious, I tell you.
I tell you, Matthew, I think if they got any more serious than this, we'd be in trouble.
Man, if they get any more serious than this, they might turn into a radio.
I see what you did there. That took me a second, but that was pretty good. You get it, folks?
Yeah, I'm unlocking new levels of analogies and puns that they get so deep that sometimes people don't even get them until 10 minutes later.
I'm truly so smart. But anyways, we also get to see the 12th Combat Aviation Brigade of the Ukrainian Army also conducting indirect rocket fire on Russian forces today near to the Zaporizhia front. We love to see it.
You know, I might have to take up, what do they call it, rapping. I might have to take that up one day, eventually. If anything ever goes south, I might have to take that up, I think they call those bars occasionally.
Man, I've heard that a lot of rappers have ended up behind those, actually.
Well, you don't have to end up behind bars. I mean, you could just record a little bit of music and try to stay out of a little bit of trouble. I mean, you don't have to get violent.
Man, I think that kind of actually comes with a business. From all the rap songs I've heard, I think that kind of comes with a business. But anyways, moving us on down to Zaporizhia, we also get to see Russian positions getting hit down here by hammers.
Oh, wow. That's not smart to come out of the hidey hole.
No.
Oh, no. Look at this. This is not a friendly thing. This is like seeing those killer bees coming in.
Man, right now, someone in the EPA is having an absolute aneurysm over the pollution this thing is conducting while it flies. It's really a beauty, folks, how all Soviet military equipment is some of the most pollutant and most toxic stuff that you've ever seen. I'm not I know that a lot of people here may not be huge environmentalists. I'll actually say, folks, I'm one who likes to see that things are kept clean, so I kind of like the EPA stuff. But outside of that, I think we can all agree, standing behind that or if there were any living plants behind that thing when it flew over, I bet you they're all dead right now, because that is enough pollutants in one go to kill anything underneath it that's a plant or an animal. But we could see it dropping the hammers.
It's like they're crop dusting them with carbon emissions.
Man, some Russian on the ground just said, "Oh, that's funny." What, Ivan? It's like I just instantly developed asthma all of a sudden. It's like, wow, that's weird. I wonder why. But here comes the hammers.
We want to eliminate the syndrome of asthmatic because we don't want to get automatic disease in Russia. Russia is certainly not concerned with tepid legality. They're concerned with maximum lethality. That's what they say.
Increased pollution, not decreased solutions.
I'll tell you what, Secretary of War type beat.
Oh my God, nothing ever says, folks, being a real man like having to make a poem out of everything, like you're a sorority girl who just got into Pi Kappa Alpha or whatever. Nothing ever says that. But he's moving us on up into Kyiv. It is time for us to finally get to the speech from the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has many things to say today. In fairly dim lighting, I will admit. But nevertheless, here's the speech. Peach!
Шановні українці, українки, щойно була доповідь міністра внутрішніх справ України Ігоря Клименка по розслідуванню всіх обставин нападу в Києві на людей та бездіяльності тих двох патрульних, які були на місці злочину, але не зупинили вбивцю, самі втекли. Вже є кримінальне провадження щодо цього факту, буде повна перевірка роботи патрульних, вони повинні були діяти у тих обставинах. ДБР займається цією справою, розслідування щодо нападу і перевірку всіх фактів щодо вбивці, його стану, отримання ним зброї ведуть разом Служба безпеки України та Національна поліція України. Міністр зробить кадрові висновки по всій вертикалі. Треба переглянути і протоколи реагування на такі ситуації, а також добору та навчання патрульних. Зараз в лікарнях перебувають 8 людей, які були поранені. Одна людина в вкрай важкому стані. Надається вся необхідна допомога. Сьогодні я говорив з президентом Фінляндії. Алекс висловив свої співчуття. Ми проходимо через війну, і щодня, на жаль, людські втрати від російських ударів на позиції. Особливо болісно втрачати людей ось так, в звичайному місті. Просто на вулиці. Вічна пам'ять усім загиблим. Наступного тижня ми готуємо важливі новини щодо нашої безпекової співпраці з партнерами. Не забуваємо, що протиповітряна оборона для України, підтримка для нашої армії, забезпечення нашої оборони – це незмінний пріоритет. Буде більше наших безпекових домовленостей. Рустем Умєров працює з відповідними країнами, вже є домовленість про безпекову співпрацю з Індією. Фіналізуємо, що були документи. Рустем щойно доповів мені деталі. Готуємось і до нової роботи з європейськими партнерами, щоб розблокувати пакет підтримки для України, який вже був ухвалений, але досі не почав надходити. Важливо розблокувати. Окреме питання – санкції проти Росії за цю війну, та які повинні штовхати Росію до реальної дипломатії. На жаль, є чергове рішення Америки на послаблення нафтових санкцій. Жодної реальної користі від цього для дипломатії не буде. Кожен долар від нафти тільки налаштовує Росію воювати далі. Але навіть цими грошима вони все одно не вирішать проблем. Наші далекобійні санкції продовжують працювати. Я вдячний усім нашим воїнам за влучність. Тільки за цей березень російські нафтові втрати від нашої далекобійності оцінюються щонайменше у 2 мільярди 300 мільйонів доларів. Це 1 місяць. Зараз в квітні ми продовжуємо. Я хочу за це особисто відзначити перший окремий центр СБС Збройних сил України, 98-й розвідувальний центр ССО, 19-ту ракетну бригаду, 360-ту окрему берегову ракетну бригаду і наші спеціальні сили, Службу безпеки України, розвідки та кожного, хто старається, щоб можливості Росії зменшувалися і щоб нашої безпеки України було більше. Говорили з головнокомандувачем Олександром Сирським будемо продовжувати наші далекобійні санкції проти Росії за цю війну. Дякую усім, хто дбає про Україну, хто дбає про українців. Дякую усім, хто нам допомагає. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky. And that is going to be moving us on out of this news segment and on into the question segment after another successful fundraiser and another night of news. And I got to thank you all so much once again for watching so far tonight on behalf of both myself and Enforcer Matt here on the Enforcer crew, because we are absolutely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all have been here with us once again tonight. We had 23,000 people here at the peak, and 120,000 people have watched this stream in about 2 hours. I cannot thank you all enough for watching and spending your time here, and I hope that our news and our analysis has been up to spec and high quality like it always is. And before we move on, I do have to say, Matthew, that pollution in Russia is a real deal, you know? Like wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, man. You know, whenever Russia looks at anything, man, they always got to improve it, man. Like, if they looked at this, they'd be like, yeah, tier 4 regulation, boy, terrible thing, make it better. Ah, yes. Much better, boy.
Oh, look at that. Rolling coal.
Man,
that's considered a feature in certain regions of the United States.
You know, some people might be like, hey, Enforcer, that's kind of like misrepresenting Russia. That's actually a Canadian train in Canada in like the 60s. Russia certainly couldn't be like that. Well, I mean, you know, they are. Like, that's actually the Russian realities. But, you know, Russia has this thing, folks. I don't know what it is about pollution and whatnot. They have, like, a yearning for the stuff. Like, when they see, like, beautiful meadows like these up in the Wasatch, they go, ah, it looks too clean, too perfectly. Ah, yes, much better. Ah, yes, the
And they like to dirty it up a little bit. They like to get a little dusty.
Ah, yes, look at this. Crack full of shit. It's a wonderful place. This is where you should raise a family of maybe 4 people, and make like $5 a day, and then your boss will beat you to death if you ever, you know, do not work overtime 6 hours a day on your 20-hour shift. You know, I don't know what it is, folks, with Russia and like the Soviet countries, like the ones that are still Soviet, like the ones they haven't westernized, because they actually have this thing to where they are just the most pollutant, and they don't give a damn. Like, they never have, they never will. And these are some of the good images I'd assume that they got out of some of Russia's most polluted cities. Like, if you went to some of America's most polluted cities, they look wildly clean, even compared to Russia's middle of the road city when it comes to pollution. But anyways, it is time for us to move on. Also, by the way, if y'all are wondering where this is actually in Utah, here in the Wasatch Mountain Range. Like, I literally typed in Beautiful Meadows, Wasatch. These are some of the scenes that you can get in the spring. Really, really beautiful place around here. But anyways, it is time for us to move on and into some questions. Because I do understand, folks, that we've got many people here that have been enjoying the show tonight. And we want to get to talk to as many of y'all as we can. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So in the meantime, a big shout out, by the way, for the fundraiser, currently reaching almost $2,900 raised right now. Fantastic work. We're sitting just shy, about $50 shy of $2,900 right now. So very good work. In the meantime, to call off some more top donors, we have had a $123 donation from Urban Rebel, as well as a $113 from Give Up Now and a $50 from Smarzig. And a huge shout out to all 3 of y'all once again for supporting the fundraiser. And also a huge shout out to everybody else that we were not able to call off, unfortunately, because there's been simply so many donations. If we called off everybody, we would be here all night long, and also the audience would probably run. They'd say, I can't take it anymore, I gotta leave, and they'd probably leave. So sadly, we'd love to call everybody out, but sadly we can't due to reasons, that is. But a huge shout out to everybody once again for making it possible for us to hit that goal yet again. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say a humongous shout out to everybody who has been supporting this fundraiser tonight. Whether it's a huge donation that we can call out or a small one, every single person has made their impact and done their part. And we are absolutely appreciative of so many of y'all supporting this fundraiser, as 100% of the funds raised goes to that nonprofit, and it's fun. Well, actually, the fundraiser for the nonprofit is actually managed entirely by YouTube and run in a separate account where we don't touch any of the money. It just goes straight into that account and then straight to the nonprofit. And we have to thank you all massively for supporting the fundraiser, because it's going to be helping out a lot of wounded veterans here in the United States of America, and we are more than appreciative of y'all's support for them. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I just saw someone in the chat say something really interesting. I thought this would be an interesting live chat. Someone said, this is why I think we're economically killing the United States with all these green policies. It doesn't make any difference because of all the other countries that are polluting like Russia in the world. Well, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty decent argument, actually, like in that vein. But the thing is, though, is like if it was economically killing the country, our GDP would be falling, but our GDP is rising faster than most every other country on the planet still. If you look at Russia's GDP over the past 10 years before the war started, they weren't gaining anything. They're poisoning their environment, slowly killing their people with all the pollutants and toxins that they basically swim in every day, and yet they don't get anywhere economically. And on top of that, as far as a quality of life, like I don't want to wake up in a smog-filled hellhole every day, breathing in mercury and arsenic and stuff in the natural air, just so that way we can say that some shareholder somewhere might have been able to turn a couple of extra bucks on the multi-millions of stocks that he owns in a single company. I think that there is a certain appreciation there needs to be had for the natural beauty of the country and also the upkeep of the natural assets that we have in this country. Because something else that a lot of people don't think about is if you have all of those pollutants in the air, it makes crop harvests a lot weaker. In general, you either have to start incredibly messing with the genomes of the crops to be able to make them more resilient. It could poison the fish, meaning that fisheries and that economy suffers. It's generally not a good thing. Like I'd actually have to say, a lot of people may say this or may say this from a position of knowledge or may say it from ignorance, but I actually say that the Environmental Protection Agency and the environmental regulations of the United States isn't a weakness or a dagger in America's back. It's more so of a benefit than anything, and I think that that's certainly a way forward, is to make sure that the United States remains a clean and as pollutant-free country as we can be, because the alternative is living in a toxic hellhole like Russia, which me personally, for my own quality of life, I wouldn't want to live in. But anyways, I hope that does address that live chat well. I mean, it's an interesting one. And with that, we are on into the live chat questions at large and the super chats and everything else in between. So, Mandy, what do we got?
All right, so first of all, getting our Morse code decoders of the night. We had the entire roster as usual. We had Paul, Kevin, Mason, as well as Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic Fluffiness, Kush, Copaterix, Sire, and Brian. And they said the Morse said, well, it looks like war is back on the menu. Maybe we shouldn't be talking with the terrorists in the United States. LOT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. You'll get the Morse code message of the night. You'll get that correct. I got to congratulate y'all, the Lee Springer Army Student Corps, for getting that correct time and time again. Y'all are always getting that right. Dead on the nail, as a matter of fact. And we're always shocked by that, amazed by that. And we are proud of the Lee Springer Army Student Corps for always getting the Morse code message correct every single night. And so, a humongous thanks to y'all so much once again for getting that Morse code message. And with that, Matthew, what else do we have here?
All right, so first of all, we're going to grab our super chats that we have and then get right into our live chat questions of the night. But starting off with our first super chat, we have one from Down Under. We have a 22 Australian from none other than Duncan VR. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support once again, and we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, "Ba moo wolf quack. Sir, we're gonna close a deal. I see one Big Mac and Reggie 3 cheeseburgers. Sir, let's do a deal. Iran wants a meal deal, do they? They want more.
I thank you greatly, Duncan VR, for that wildly amazing support. Folks like you keep this channel running. It's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. It's huge. It's huge. People call me up from miles around. They go, sir, I love your show. It's a great show. Maybe you could throw in some more jokes into it. And then I sit there and tell them that they're fake news because they're a joke and they're clearly watching. So that's our comedy. I'm just playing. But beyond that, I got to thank you incredibly for the support, Duncan VR. I've got to say that we're massively thankful and greatly appreciative of folks like you being here. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to have a little bit of comedy in there in our super chat segments, and we wouldn't be able to keep the show running. We thank you incredibly. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Craig Jones. And thank you very much, Craig, as well, for that support. He said, "What now, Enforcer?"
What now? Now we panic. Like, obviously, like we freak out and panic and do nothing. I'm just kidding. Now we militarily reopened the strait. don't bomb the power plants, don't bomb the bridges, just deal with the problem that we directly have. You know, according to the president, we have the strongest military in the world that can do literally anything. And not only that, we state that the Iranians are so weak and militarily incapable that they're basically already defeated. So if we just take the president's words at face value, then that means we should easily be able to just militarily reopen the strait without having to, leverage untold damage just to the common Iranian citizen to be able to open the strait and get it through. So there's a breakdown of this, folks, that comes down to it. Either the president's statements are true and we can easily reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or the president's lying to everyone when he says that, and we're nowhere close to reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which it is completely bogus because we can't open it if we conduct enough military action. So that's what I would say is next. What do we do next? We just militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz and we go back to the war. I don't even know why we did a ceasefire, because it made no sense. It wasn't like the Iranians were going to meet us in the middle on anything or compromise, so why even conduct a ceasefire? We should have kept up maximum pressure.
Maximum pressure, not tepid, finicky plans.
Hold up, man. Hold up. I need to go get this really quickly. Oh man, hang on. Let's see. Hold up. I typed in the wrong things. Let's see. Oh damn, bro. Pressure doesn't have a homonym to it, like where it sounds similar. So I was about to go find something like, we need increased pressure, not something smesher or something like that. And there's literally no word like pressure apparently in the English language. So we need increased pressure on Iran, not increased pressure. Well, actually, not increased blood pressure for America. There we go. How about you, Pokemon, go to the polls?
Jeez, man. Oh man, I'll tell you what.
Oh boy, how about that? Let's see, what's another one we could do? How about that Howard Dean scream?
Here's what we need, folks. We need, for the U.S. military, we need real lethality, not hesitant hands, not lawyers in foxholes dictating commands. We need the warfighter's edge, precision, and will, not endless tape on Capitol Hill. Let's see here. From the deserts of the sand to the cold Arctic deep, the soldiers stand guard within the free nation's sleep.
No, Hassan, I will not open the Strait of Hormuz. I like Dr. Seuss.
Open sesame.
How about rain, go away, come another day, or whatever. I don't know.
I'm just gonna say this: like, Claude is not good at coming up with poems. That was pure garbo right there. Like that thing came up with. I said, make it in the style of the Secretary of War's little poem he came up with, and it came up with this garbo. This doesn't sound anything like the real deal. You must use something else.
Oh, hold up. I gotta get this about reopening news. Okay, let me see if I can get something here on this one.
I really feel like the U.S. is using like a Popeye maneuver though on like the Strait of Hormuz right now. Like they're really not sure how to open it. So like how the Popeye like cartoons. There was that one moment where Popeye was like standing at the brick wall or something like that, and he was like, "How's this go? Open sesame."
Silence.
Then the brick wall like open and stuff like that. It's like I feel like we're doing something like that.
Silence. Secretary of War here. Steal the fleet and chart the tide. The narrow gate shall not divide. Where tankers wait in anxious line, we draw the mark, we hold the line. Bro, oh my God, dude.
That sounds like him. That sounds like him. That sounds close. That's closer than Claude came up with. What's that one being used?
ChatGPT, bro.
That ChatGPT sounds a lot closer to it than Claude. I think we might be getting to the bottom of this.
Man, dude, it kept going, man. It has 5 stanzas, like no joke to this, like 5. What is it actually? Is it a stanza for a poem, or is that just for anthems?
It's real pentameter, not tepid
diameter.
Yeah, like that.
Let cables hum and engines wake. No distant threat our course shall break. From desert wind to open foam, we cleared the path that leads oil home. Damn, bro, this thing kind of like Like, bro, this
Shut up, Pete. Just blow the whole country up. That'll fix it. It's like, whoa. It's like, hold on a minute. You can't go from the Secretary of War's poems to something crazy like that. You got to chill out, man. Honestly, we got the Secretary of War out here. He's reading off like this, like pretty much like on the spot poetry. Then we got the president out here talking about he's just going to blow the whole country of Iran up if they don't make a deal. It's like we got people in here that are like, they got their different thoughts. They're on different wavelengths, I think.
Man, is the ghost of Dick Cheney and ChatGPT? Because this thing said, "We clear the path that leads oil home." Hey, yo, is Cheney? Is that you? Hold up, let me ask it. Cheney, is that you? Let's see here. Let me make sure to get the name right. There we go. Bro, ChatGPT said it does have a little bit of Cheneyism in it. It's like, hey, yo, he's here. Bro, I feel like that Star Trek episode at that point where, like, they got the heart monitor out and then that guy went, "It's Finney." Man, like, I sat there and listened to that poem about the oil part. I was like, Cheney, he's here. Like, man, it's like, go find him quick. He'll probably get us out of this whole situation. He does it, folks, for the love of the game, which is very different than what everyone else is doing it for right now. But anyways, it is time for us to get on and into the next one.
And our next one goes to Craig Jones yet again, who puts in another $20 support. And thank you very much, Craig, for that support once again. He said, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." That's funny. Also, by the way, that's really cringy to say that. It's like, the only times you ever hear somebody saying Mr. Nice Guy is like when like someone who's trying to act tough's like really trying to like bow up on somebody and they're like, "Well, don't push me. No more Mr. Nice Guy." It's like, what the? It's like, come on. It's like, who the hell says that? Like, no more Mr. Nice Guy. It's like, I've never heard nobody say that in real life. It's like, I thought this was just in the movies or something. It's like, what's going on? But what say you?
It's not like what cartoon villains say in like kids shows. "No more Mr. Nice Guy." It's like, that's lame. That's stupid sounding. Like, honestly, like, I can't, like people are gonna be like, "Oh, you're just dissing on the president." No, that would sound stupid if it came from anyone. If I heard anyone say "No more Mr. Nice Guy," I just lose respect for him immediately. Like, just straight up. But you know, like, I'm not gonna lie, in that voice though, it'd be kind of scary. "Okay, we've gotten kind of tired of it. No more Mr. Nice Guy." It's like,
it's like one time I saw these like two former like Italian mobsters. They were like talking on a podcast or something like that. Which strange world, by the way. You see like a former Italian mobsters talking on a podcast. Strange things that happen in 2026. But they were on there arguing, and one of them said, "That's a whole bunch of baloney." And the other guy was like, "Who the hell says a whole bunch of baloney?" It's like, no one even says that. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's one of those type phrases. Like, nobody says like Mr. Nice Guy, like that's a whole bunch of baloney. It's like, nobody says this stuff in real life. It's like stuff you only hear like in movie scripts or something like that. It's like, that's not normal language.
It's like how the last president would say, "Hey, that's a bunch of malarkey." It's like, who the hell ever says malarkey, like, in real speech? I've never heard malarkey before he said it, by the way. Like, I heard it in cartoon, like, wordage, but never in real. And then also, Marie Jacob said hogwash. I remember there was this one time that this, like, British interviewer was, like, interviewing Bill Gates. He was like, "Would you say that Microsoft is conducting illegal activities?" or something like that. And then Bill Gates was like, "Oh, that's a bunch of hogwash." And I'm like, and then hogwash. Like, the British interviewer was like, "Hogwash? What do you mean hogwash?" It was really weird, but I don't know what it is with people just like whipping out like these 200-year-old phrases sometimes, like malarkey and hogwash and stuff like that. Like, who the hell has even washed a hog recently to even know what that would mean? Like, really, it's like, it's not even a relatable saying or anything, But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Jazz, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jazz, for that $10 support. And we do appreciate that. Tell us, Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Scuderia, which sounds very much like a car company out there, but I'm scared to say their name, though, because they kind of scare me. But Scuderia put in a 10 right here, the viewer, that is, and they said it's kind of bizarre how all of this always happens when the U.S. stock markets are closed. My bet is tomorrow Iran agrees to the talks, and then, maybe somebody out there possibly, does something in the market, maybe. What are your thoughts, LSA?
I'd say Definitely could happen. Every Monday comes around and we're back on the dove again. It's going to be great. It's all going to be peace and love, all that stuff. So it might happen tomorrow. We'll have to see. Because we've been running this roller coaster now for 6 weeks, and I'd have to say there's definitely a pattern at this point. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Man, I hope the stock market doesn't get so bad. You know how they like trade futures and stuff, like oil futures and everything. I hope the market doesn't get so bad that like we're gonna start trading the past. It's like you start getting that bad. We start wanting to like turn back the clock and start like trading stuff from a different era. It's like we don't want to get that bad. Like honestly, the futures these days look kind of rough. Like that's usually like a very volatile thing. I just personally, I would not touch the stock market in this environment. I would not. Like it just seems like such a bad idea with all the volatility. It's like I don't trade in the stock market but for the people that do, it's like how do they like cope with this volatility that's going on right now? It's like if you're trying to trade something like even commodities, it's such large swings in it. It's like you really can't like stay invested in something like that. You gotta like day trade it or something. It's really sketchy.
I'm the president who brought up quantum messaging into the Oval Office. Now I'm going to be bringing parallel universe trading. It's where you go and you trade the oil in a parallel universe where everything's going well, because clearly it's better over there. And you can just ship it across the parallel universe framework to ours. We get the oil from them. I heard that the parallel universe is actually going to create a nuclear weapon in 2 weeks. We might have to deal with that. But anyways, I hope that doesn't address that well. But yeah, it's quite volatile out there, Matthew. I'd have to tell you, very volatile indeed. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to none other than Craig Jones yet again, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Craig, for that support. He said Ukraine can take out 200 drones a day, and America don't mess with these guys. Make friends, be smart.
Oh, Ukraine can take out more than that. These days, they take out like 1,500 drones a day. Like they do incredibly good. And so I got to thank you so much for the support, Craig. And I would definitely say we should be friends with Ukraine. They're militarily smart. And that's what we need these days. We need smarts. We need smarts, see? That's something that doesn't really exist right now in the government. There's not a lot of smarts up there. There's a lot of people who like to talk their mouths off, like myself. But I have to do this for a living. That's the difference. They don't have to do it for a living. Like, they don't get impeached if they shut up for a day. They need to stop talking and start thinking. That would really help them out a lot. It would help them out so much. So incredibly much. But they won't do it, folks, because the only thing they got going for them is talking these days, because they actually don't have the ability to think, which is really the shame of it all. Maybe we should vote for someone who can think, folks, who can think and maybe talk from time to time when they have to. Like, for example, when they go to a press conference or maybe have to do something live in front of a crowd. Oh, wink, nudge. Maybe someone like the Enforcer, who I've heard is really smart and intelligent and is really capable of spinning a good yarn, might be able to run for president. I don't know. I don't know. I heard that from some people. Oh, God, he's rubbing off on me, Matthew. I'm about to start making truths here in a little. Everything's never been better.
You're trying to outdo the president.
Man, I'm just saying, hey, I'm just saying, folks, you could vote for me in 2040, and hopefully by then we could turn the situation around, if it hasn't turned around by then. I don't know, maybe. I'm just saying, it's a suggestion, folks. You don't have to live by it or anything. I'm just putting it out there for all of y'all. But with that, as long, by the way, folks, as long as we fund the whole political campaign through Super Chats and Patreon supporters, we won't have to bend the knee to a Super PAC. So with that, we are on to the next one.
Also a 5 from Flash of Light. You said Iran wins if Hormuz has a toll, but China wasn't planning on a U.S. blockade. Next is to attack anything financed or built by the Chinese in Iran.
I would say, we'll have to see. But a big thanks to you for supporting this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
All right, and that rounds out our Super Chats, by the way. And a huge shout out to everybody once again for Super Chatting us, even on a Sunday night, and we do appreciate that. It's now time to get into our live chat questions, though, which is what the Sunday night streams are built for. They're built for live chats, that is. For just the folks who are making the questions, and we're simply collecting them and we're reading them off. So we'll start with our first one. This one goes to James, who said, how long before Russia moves against NATO's eastern flank?
I would say at this point it might be within this year, given how bad their economic situation is, according to those economic experts privy to the matters in Russia. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a question from Chef Danny B. He said, this is a good question. He said, but does Iran have any submarines?
Yes, they do, but they only have 3 actual seagoing submarines, which are the Kilo class submarines, and I believe 1 or 2 of those have already been generally disabled or destroyed. And then they have the midget subs, which basically don't count for anything these days. So technically, yes, but in reality, not really. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question from Amanda, who said, since the Iranians are claiming that the ship traveled from China to Iran, how likely is it that China themselves gets involved over the situation?
Highly unlikely. The vessel was Iranian flagged. So generally, I would assume they're probably not going to get involved anyway, unless if Chinese contraband is found on board, like weapons parts and whatnot. And then the Chinese are probably going to get forced to get involved, because then that would create a major diplomatic showdown between us and them about them trying to send weapons to a country that we're at war with. So we'll have to see. And I have a feeling, folks, I'm not saying this with definite certainty, but this is what I'm thinking. With the ship not stopping for anything and attempting to break the blockade and try and get basically as far as they could to Bandar Abbas, something seems quite suspicious about that to me. Like, I think there is probably a chance there might have been something on board that was somewhat questionable, because the fact that the vessel was fired upon by the U.S. Well, the U.S. Navy had to fire upon the ship to even stop it, to board it, and seize the ship is telling me that something's a little bit afoot here with this vessel and what it was carrying. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from it's Zio, who said, how many more crazy threats is the U.S. going to make before the U.S. actually does something crazy? Too many threats from the United States and not enough action toward Iran, and it kind of discredits everything.
I don't even know, because the president is very unpredictable. To the point that it becomes like, honestly, even just thinking about answering this question, folks, gets me so frustrated and aggravated, because it's a good question, but it's literally impossible to give a good answer to it, because the president can wake up tomorrow and say that things are fine when they're not, and then wake up the next day and say he's going to wipe out a whole country. And the situation doesn't change no matter what, and the approaches are just completely different day to day. I don't know how many other times he's going to threaten this and back off of it, but at this point, it's just entered the realm of insanity. It's just whatever ramblings come out today or what we're going with, and we don't know what's going to be happening tomorrow or what the grand plan is, and nobody up in Washington knows what the grand plan is, because there isn't one. So it's just really hard to give a good answer to that, sadly. So I hope that addresses that the best I can, but sadly, I wouldn't be able to give you an accurate answer. And with that, we're on the next one. Also, we have interesting news, apparently.
And also, we have some interesting news coming out. We've been reporting on this for the last 24 hours or so, and it looks like some of the folks that monitor the radio broadcast from the U.S. military are still saying that over the past 24 hours, we've been seeing all these emergency action messages going out, and they're believed to be connected to E-6B doomsday planes. And once again, I want to make this clear. I always have to give this disclaimer, because when we say stuff like this, it invokes images of, this clickbait, like YouTube content, where people are like, oh, the doomsday bombers are flying. It's not like that. And also, we're not trying to make claims as doomsday or something like that. We're simply reporting on the radio signals coming from these aircraft. But we're seeing that apparently over the last 24 hours, according to Neat Intel, there's been nearly about 100 EAMs being broadcast, if not more, which is believed to be very unusual, by the way. And we're even seeing that apparently there's a NOTAM that's been issued right off the coast of Washington and also California as well, which appears to be somewhat unusual. And it seems to be sort of corroborating with the E-6B information that we're hearing about as well. So it's believed to be, or at least in my speculation, maybe possibly a drill that they're conducting, but this is a pretty serious drill. We don't see these very often whatsoever. So, it could be something more than that. We just simply don't know, but just once again, bringing that to everybody's attention that we're seeing tonight. But Enforcer, what do you make of it?
It's pretty interesting, but rather than what you covered, I wouldn't really be able to make much more of it. It looks to be a drill, and a fairly significant one. They might announce it after it's over, that it had happened and had been conducted, but at this moment, folks, it just looks generally like a drill. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from AJ Virginia, who said, any idea how many troops are there now and actively en route? And I've lost track and I can't determine an approximate number.
Right now, there's definitely 6,000 troops inside the Middle East. Here soon, there's going to be about 9,000. And we can only guarantee that there's going to be at a minimum about 9,000. We don't know how much larger it's going to be than that, but we know definitely 9,000. So I hope that addresses that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Rich, who said a big question is how willing is Xi and Putin to help Iran once the U.S. and Israel start up their attacks again?
That's a good question. I bet you they'd be pretty willing to help because they've been pretty willing to try and help as much as they can so far when the shooting war was going on, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime here soon. They're not going to directly get in the middle of fighting the war for Iran, but they're definitely going to try and provide material support if it's possible. So with that, I hope that has addressed that well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a question here from none other. Well, hold on. Whoa, hold on a minute. Let's see here. CENTCOM has blessed us with new footage. Let's see here. So I'm going to repost this. I'm going to read this off real quick. Here's what the clip's about to show us. We're about to watch it here in just a second. Courtesy of U.S. CENTCOM, who is on the video grind. They say this video here shows U.S. Marines departing the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli by helicopter, transiting over the Arabian Sea to board and seize the MV Tuska. And the Marines repelled onto the Iranian-flagged vessel on April the 20th, according to CENTCOM, after the guided missile destroyer USS Spruance disabled the propulsion system when the vessel failed to comply with repeated warnings from U.S. forces over a 6-hour period. So let's take a look. We actually have footage showing the boarding of the vessel after the engine was knocked out by the 5mm or 5-inch gun on that destroyer. So let's take a look.
We start with a footage of the Seahawks lifting off of the Tripoli. And now we can see them at the Tuska, orbiting it, as one of the helicopters prepares to have its Marines rappel onto the deck. We can now see them rappelling down onto the cargo vessel. It is a container ship. And that was the end of the footage. But what some neat footage right there.
That is pretty neat. You don't really see any resistance from the crew, at least in that film that they made right here. So if there was resistance, it wasn't on camera.
I'd assume there probably wasn't any resistance. They were probably just trying to see if they could actually break the U.S. resolve and make it to Bandar Abbas before they were stopped and boarded. And then once they were stopped, they were like, yeah, we don't stand a chance. Might as well just let them get on board. But we did board successfully, and we did take the ship under our control. So very nice to see.
Man, that's a strange video of pirates right there. I'll tell you, I've never seen pirates with NVGs and all kinds of tactical gear. That's some very loaded out pirates right there. You call those the modern day swashbucklers.
Yar, slap on the nods and the bulletproof vests and the nice M4s. We're going to board a ship. But Captain, we're pirates. Where did all this come from? Budget increases. Get on the helicopter.
The pirates have never been more funded. It's got $1 trillion budget. Yes, sir.
Man, yar, I heard that there's nice food on board them ships over there. This food on the Tripoli is shit. Let's go over there and take that vessel. Yar. Man, I bet you, man, if there is actually good food on that thing, I bet you they kind of stuffed a couple in their jacket and brought it back to the Tripoli with them.
Let's load up on the helicopters, my boy, and go over there and give those boys a triply hard bypass on that ship. Arg.
Yar, let's shove wet shoe soles made of leather down their throats since we take the shoe soles made of leather, shoving it down.
Man, what you talking about? What you talking about?
The food on board the Tripoli, man. You know, the free, we covered it literally. We just covered it a couple of days ago, man. The freaking leather sole of the shoe.
Oh, this is what you're talking about.
Oh, my Lord.
The strip of leather.
Yar, matey. Shove it down their throats. Let them taste what we've been eating for, weeks on board the Tripoli. Yar. That'd be some fine booty.
I'm not sure what to say about this.
All right, well, now that we made this awkward, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Orca Owl, who said, if opening the Strait of Hormuz is our only goal at this point, what will we have gained? And going forward, what can we learn from the situation?
Let's see. While we wouldn't have gained anything by bombing their power plants and their bridges, that won't open the strait. It will just increase the suffering of the Iranian people who might be in support of us. And going forward, what we can learn of the situation is that we need people who think beyond a third grade level and have watched more than Hollywood movies when it comes to military planning. I think that is probably the best sort of a lesson that we can learn from this whole thing, honestly. Not getting political there, but just speaking the honest truth. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from Justin, who said, "Will arming the Iranian civilians help overthrow the IRGC?" I don't know. I'm not sure if they can really arm them, to be honest, because we had heard reports that the U.S. government had allegedly, excuse me, gotta get some water in a minute. But we had heard reports that allegedly the U.S. government had tried to give weapons to the Kurds, and then there was allegations that maybe the Kurds didn't deliver the weapons, or something happened where maybe they decided to keep them, possibly. It sounds like they came and get the weapons to the civilians, from the sounds of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I don't think we can arm them either. I mean, the Kurds won't arm them, so that kind of ends that route. So then the CIA would have to do that directly, and I don't know if the CIA would be willing or able to do that directly. That might not be safe or feasible for them. And then if we give weapons to the Iranian people, is there any guarantee they're going to rise up against their government? And I would say that right now that's a little questionable. So generally the chances are slim to none. We had our opportunity in mid-January when they did rise up, and then the Iranians killed 40,000 of them. I think that was our opportunity missed right there, and I don't think we're getting another one. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Knox Date, who said, "In your guys' opinion, how long would the Russian or how long would the Russia or NATO be, since Russia is only doing this to get to the nuclear escalation?"
I think that the significant escalations from the Russians are probably going to be happening sometime in between this year or the next year. I'm pretty sure. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one here is going to go to Catalyst Destiny, who said, "Speaking of Russian drones, did you see the articles today about Russian Shahed drones are disintegrating in air due to the shoddy quality?" I didn't see those articles, but I did hear an article today that claimed that because Russia is going so broke, they're having to use like subpar components, and also it's partially due to sanctions as well. And now their cruise missiles are getting a lot more inaccurate, like 50 to 100 meters of accuracy, which is awful, by the way, because they don't have the money, nor do they have the ability to purchase the components that they were buying before. So now their missiles are wildly inaccurate, and the things are basically like lunatic missiles at this point. At least that's what they're saying. But Enforcer, what say you?
I heard something similar. I didn't hear about Shaheds breaking up in air, but I did hear about the missiles becoming far less accurate. So I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And we also have one here from Valana, who said, "What do you think of the chances that the U.S. contributing to the rebuild of Iran once the IRGC is gone?"
Probably decently high. Usually the United States starts rebuilding efforts because it's a significant economic investment that we get a return on once a war ends. But I'm not entirely sure how that would go, or how to what extent that would be given the current government. They might try and extract value out of Iran instead of trying to invest in return value over the long term, but who's to say? So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that one's going to go to Mel, who said, "Do you think that the weird messages being broadcast by the E-6Bs for Fairchild Air Force Base has anything to do with China issuing an advisory for its people in Seattle and Washington State?" Where was that advisory? I didn't see that today. Is that a thing?
I don't know. I didn't hear about that myself. I would have to say I would have to declare ignorance on that, unfortunately, Mel Brown, because I just haven't heard about the Chinese giving out that kind of a warning and really getting enough context as to what it might have been about to be able to say whether those things are correlated or not. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much for watching over the past 2.5 hours. We've been able to raise a whopping quite a significant amount. Sadly, folks, I actually can't see the total on my screens. But we have been able to raise a significant amount. I think it's around very close to $3,000 for the Wounded Warriors Project. And also, we've had a huge amount of y'all here tonight. Almost 23,000 people here at the peak, and 135,000 people watched the stream before it ended. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching and supporting this fundraiser tonight. We are always greatly appreciative to know that so many people care about those soldiers of the U.S. Armed Forces who have given almost everything they've got for this country, and it's good to know that we're trying to help them out in turn. And so with that, folks, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made tomorrow, I will be the one making that short war video. So with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. We appreciate every single one of you that were here with us tonight. And also, once again, a huge shout out for helping us to hit well over that goal. We're currently sitting just shy of 2,900 raised, and the goal was 2,500. So very good work once again, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And we will see you all tomorrow, maybe on a shorter video if there's enough news to cover, and definitely on Tuesday night for the next Nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern. So we'll see you all then. But in the meantime, though, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.